blessed once again with the light of day, works of the day. When they come into play, tinderbox emotions, international replay, feeding a herd mentality of negativity. That's how it's going to be. So powerful when the world taps into the good idea. Pure water, clean air, and how that feels. World tap in, world tap in. Wouldn't have chosen things to be this way. That when you ask is what they all say. Each overwhelmed by the intricacy of how complex things can be. Perfect love in the simplicity. This has to stay afloat, buoyancy. Silence when no one asks for input to be. How can I help within all empathy? This offering when given freely. World happy, world happy. So powerful when the world taps in. World tap into the good idea. Pure water, clean air, and how that feels. World tap in, world tap in, world tap in, world tap in. Some are aiding escapees and some are hiding refugees. Healing some of the greatest success stories. Einstein in brilliance still had to flee to fulfill his destiny. Fulfill his destiny. And it's so powerful when the world tap into the good ideas. Pure water, clean air, and all that feels. World tap in, world tap in. Oh, world tap in. Every ear listening, you see it as advantages, amenities, incentives for the liberty. Not so much a tragedy, love and solidarity. Yo, help and the clarity in a love principality. Make it actuality. Break trust and go down in the deepest of valley. Hard to regain and difficult to rally. It's so powerful when the world taps in. World taps into the good idea. Pure water, clean air, and how that feels. World tap in, 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 world tap in. Oh, world tap in.
All right, family, greetings. Welcome to another edition of Baba TV Every Time Fire. And as you can see, Akae BEKA has a new album out, CD out, streaming on all platforms. Please go support that. Shout out to Higher Bounds Productions. And we back. The first installment was 7 hours long, but yet incomplete. And so I don't like to see anything incomplete. The Bambu King definitely doesn't want any of his work incomplete. And so we are back. It's my absolute pleasure to have back on Baba TV, his house always, my brother, the Bambu King family.
get Baba. Enough respect.
And what we're going to talk about today, what he's going to talk about is the discography chronology. He's going to put everything in order, in divine order. And Baba got some yogurt that he about to go eat, because I'm not getting in none of this time for real. I'm chilling. I'm going to sit back and listen like you on what the Bambu King has to say to us today. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to some and present to others the mighty Bambu King.
Big up, massive, enough love and respect. Yo, big up Baba TV universe. Give thanks, Baba TV, every time fire, for allowing me to come on here and complete the case, complete the presentation. I know the 7.5 hour presentation we did that I thought for sure would have been far more than enough to cover the basics of what we were trying to cover when it came to the legacy of Vaughn Benjamin, Midnite, Akae BEKA, and the long trod, not long enough, certainly, but full of works and artistic achievement and contribution to the word, sound, and power of roots and culture reggae music and the principles of Rastafari. We just give thanks that there's so much to say about the works of Vaughn Benjamin and Akae BEKA. And we could talk another 7 hours and another 7 hours on that, 7 times 7, and it still is not enough time to cover the amount of work in the 77 albums we're about to present here. But it ain't going to take 7 hours. I'm promising Baba, I'm promising myself, I'm promising each and every one of you listening, it's not going to be no 7 hours. We did all that. We're not going to retread a lot of the history. We're not going to go over the specifics and minutia and, circumstantial stories that we all have about this. No, we did all that before. That's all going to be that. The one thing I really planned on covering at that time that we just couldn't get to because the spirit just filled up that presentation with so much is the chronology and discography from the beginning of Midnite all the way through to the most recent release by Higher Bound Productions. Big up iShance. Enough respect to iShance, enough respect to the Higher Bound crew, and we're going to talk all about that album here in just a little bit. But from the beginning to without ending, because it's just going to keep on continuing, but where we're at now, 77 releases, we're going to cover that. We're going to breeze through it, and we're just going to remind people to remember all of these works, who was involved in them, who helped produce them, who helped, fashion out and hewn out the musical contributions to them so that everyone gets their flowers, so that nobody feels left out, so that it's not left to the annals of time and the ambiguity of diminished memory and AI confabulations, AI fantasy, and AI, what is it called? AI illusions, hallucinations, they call it. AI hallucinations, when so much misinformation gets condensed into the internet that when you start asking AI for the answer, it starts amalgamating falsehood, truth and falsehood to make it fair seeming, right? Isn't that the definition of technology according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Well, that's what we're dealing with in 2026 going forward when we rely on the computer to do all our thinking and memorizing and remembering and reciting for us. So as a pursuit of exercise of will and spirit and memory, we're going to try to reevaluate some of those things in this time and add it to the historical record and add it to the record of data that hopefully the AI is going to mine in the future to recite something a little more accurate. And we'll see. And plus, if anything that's presented in this presentation, once again, is wrong, please leave it in the comments. Please leave your information, your contribution, your memory of it in the comments. And so it can be in there. Nothing's getting deleted. We're just trying to hold it true. So, all right, Baba. So I think we're just going to get right into it, and we're going to do it before any albums were made. And once again, if you want any of the specifics, go back to the previous presentation. It's all in there and a whole lot more. I don't know how it went so long, but it did. So now we're going to start at the very beginning when Vaughn Benjamin and Ronnie Benjamin, even before this one, real quickly, before Unpolished, the demo that was recorded for them by Jim Fox at Lion and Fox Records, the recording that was recorded by Jim Fox, along with live cuts from live recordings at the Roxy at Lion and Fox Studios, was the demo that was produced for them to solicit their music to get gigs around. No one has it. I don't have it. Baba doesn't have it. None of us have it, but it did exist. It did exist at one point. And, big up Bambu Connors. He was the drummer at the time. Big up Joe Straws, bass player at the time, Ronnie Benjamin, Vaughn, in doing that and getting it going. All right, now we're ready, Baba. We're ready to start at one. We're going to start with the first album that was released, and quite possibly top ranking best reggae album of all time, if not the best, one of the best and most pivotal. And from my personal perspective, roots and culture Rastafarian reggae albums of all time is Midnite, Unpolished. This was recorded at East Coast Flavor Studio in Washington, D.C. in 1997. It was recorded in East Coast Flavor Studio, and it was actually not released officially until a number of years later, but it was released in Africa, Namibia, to be precise. Was the original copies that they manufactured were released on a tour they did to celebrate the completion of the album in Namibia. And but this was recorded in 1997. A pivotal year for reggae music, by the way. That's like marking the renaissance of Rastafari reggae music coming back into like a full conscious reggae music, coming into a full stride, with the likes of Luciano and Buju Banton and Sizzla Kalonji and Capleton and then Anthony B and then Junior Kelly coming up. So there's so many. Coco T, big up Coco T each and every time. Exterminator Records, Philip Faddis Burrell, Bobby Digital, so Digital B Productions, all of these producers, artists, on the rise in the mid to late 90s marked a pivotal era in roots and culture reggae music. And Midnite is kind of an unsung hero of that time as well, because they were trodden in Washington, D.C. from the mid 90s all the way up through the early 2000 with some incredible conscious roots and culture reggae music. So Midnite, Unpolished. One of the things I want to clear up is once again, that AI gets wrong because of the spoken word and the game of telephone that gets played over time. Things have gotten kind of mixed up when it comes to this album. A lot of people say it was a live recorded album. It was recorded in a studio. It was recorded track by track, instrument by instrument. People get that mixed up with the next album, Roz Make Peace, that we're going to talk about in a moment. But Midnite was an actual track by track album, produced like a proper album in a studio, engineered by Yuri, Ron Benjamin, financially produced by Preston Powell of Rastafaria Records, or built out Rastafaria Records because of this album on his Jaw Soul record label at East Coast Flavor Studio. And you had Ron Benjamin, you had Joe Straws on bass, you had Dion Bozy Hopkins on drums, you had Vaughn Benjamin singing and percussion, and that's Midnite Unpolished. An incredible album. Bushman, Propaganda, Don't Move, Africa I Belong, I mean, just every song is a winner. There's no filler. It's all killer. It's a song I can listen to over and over and over and over again and love it more and more and more each time. And I'm willing to go on record saying it's my favorite Vaughn Benjamin album of all time. There's other Midnite albums that I think are top ranking, but I have to say that this album right here, it special place in my heart, special place in the world of reggae music. So 1997, Rastafaria Records, East Coast Flavor Studio, Midnite Unpolished. Okay, so we're going to step forward to the next album that was released in 1999, which is the second album. Now, this is the album, Raz Make Peace, that was recorded in Maple Shade Studio in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, by Pierre Spray, producer who had a studio that was built on an old plantation property that he had taken some of the homes and converted them into live recording space to record bands live. He said he did something about the ultra hyper polished, ultra finessed, overmastered productions of the studio. Although he was an audiophile and a music lover, there's something that it misses in capturing sort of the occult energy, the mystical, unseen energy of when a band is playing live, playing the same notes in the same time, but there's an energy, a symbiotic relationship between the players of the instruments and the singer and the crowd and everything involved that locks in such a unique sound to the delivery of the song. And that's something that he was striving to capture. Not just, I mean, he wasn't even really doing mostly reggae bands, mostly folk bands and different things, is what he was working with. But he saw Midnite at Buckham Cafe in Adams Morgan live. His friends took him there and we told the story. We read the story from his mouth, which we're not doing again, but he saw him and he said, I got to do this. So he basically got in contact with Ron enough to where Ron said, yeah, we'll do it. He came out, visited the studio, saw the thing, said, yeah, you know what? I think we want to do the next album here. So that's what they did. The story's all on the previous thing. This album was recorded live, basically as a live band ensemble, recorded live. They played the tracks and they captured the versions of the tracks that they liked the most. They did songs that aren't on the album as well. And it was released in 1999 on Wild Child Records, recorded at Maple Shade Studio. Raz Make Peace. You can even read it on the cover, before reverb and without delay, emphasizing this isn't a hyper-produced album. This isn't an overmastered album. This is the band in the most raw form, captured as live as it could possibly be could, short of a live show recording. So that's Raz Make Peace. And the art on here, I thought the artist was somebody else, but the art tributes, all that I could find is that the art tributes on this album are for Daniel Vong and Michael Hilton. I don't know exactly which one was the artist and which one kind of put the cover and the art together, but the art itself is dedicated to, or is credited to Daniel Vong and Michael Hilton on Raz Make Peace. Okay. All right. So we're gonna move on. Oh, well, first off, this album is incredible. This album is incredible. I know a lot of people who lifelong lovers of Midnite, lovers of Akae BEKA, and this album rates and kind of surpasses a lot of the more produced albums, the more, better equipment, diverse spectrum of musicians, highly finessed and polished albums that are all incredible in their own way. But this album not only has songs that were never reiterated anywhere else, except in the live performance, but is the best sort of Kodak capture of the lineup of Midnite that in Washington, D.C., in late 90s, D.C., where the lineup was Ron on keys and harmonies, Vaughn singing, Dion Bosie Hopkins drumming, Joe Straws on bass, and Tough Lion, St. Croix veteran Tough Lion guitarist on gits. So that's when Tough Lion was actively in the band. You hear him on Banking in the Pig. You hear him, I mean, through the whole album. He's the one playing guitar on the album. And he was also the guitarist with Midnite through that era from like late 97, like just after Unpolished came out, all the way through like 99 to 2000 when they relocated back to St. Croix. So, and that lineup, according to some, is the most phenomenal live lineup that Midnite ever had. And I can't, after listening to this album, I can't really argue with that very much because it's just so incredible. And some of my favorite Midnite songs are on this album. I mean, Love Right, Live Right, Lion Wears the Crown. I've blown speakers out in from little hi-fis in houses to big sound systems. I've clipped the, I've just blown the power bars and blown speakers out playing Lion Wears the Crown on different things. So I got to be wise when I put it on because it holds that much energy. And Vaughn's real, like at that time in that specific album, like I'm into conspiracies. I'm into the, tracking down the mysteries of the Vatican and, the mysteries of Solomon's Temple, the mysteries of the Templars, the mysteries of the Black nobility and the Medici and all these and the bloodlines of the Illuminati and all this stuff. He's singing in detail a lot about that. And you can even hear a lot of stuff. There's a book from, I believe it was Michael Philip Phelps who wrote the book, Wounded in the House of My Friends, Vatican Assassins. And there's a lot of stuff intertwined in the lyrical content of that album in there. And just, Vaughn's just deep, precipice of knowledge and wisdom and understanding and tying it into his poetic and musical delivery in his unique way on this album that are just exceptional. So yeah, big up Roz Makepeace and big up Pierre Spray and Maple Shade Studio for making it happen. Because if you remember the story, it sounded like quite a bit of work and sacrifice to make it happen. And it was a completed work and it's some people's favorite album. I had a DJ say, man, we used to play that record so much. If it was a vinyl album, it probably would have cut it into a 45 because we just let that needle ride on that album over and over and over again. Obviously it was a CD, but he's like, that was like for years, that was like the most played album in his house. So Roz Makepeace, 1999. This is the second official Midnite album. All right, now relocating from Washington, D.C. for the first album that was recorded under the label African Roots Lab in St. Croix, which was Midnite's studio. Ron Benjamin, Vaughn Benjamin started their studio in St. Croix. This is where the next, I believe, 8 albums or 7 albums is where the next 7 albums under African Roots Lab label, or really 8, including the dub album, are going to be recorded, is African Roots Lab. And this is a very special album. This is one of my favorite. I always said Unpolished was the best reggae album of all time, but Jubilees of Zion is my personal favorite Midnite album because it just has so many incredible songs. And it was the first Midnite album that was completely under the managerial hand, the sound managerial hand of Ron Benjamin. He said in an interview that it was a very special album because it was the first album that he was able to do where he had complete control over how he wanted the music to sound, the recording to go, everything to his specifications, you know, because before with Unpolished, even with the demo at Jim Fox, with Unpolished at East Coast Flavor Studio, at Maple Shade Studio, he was working within the limitations of where they were at and who they were working with and who was engineering it and having to work with someone else. This is the first time where he was in the complete cockpit and he was taking the songs and rhythms and sounds that were in his vision, in his mind of what he wanted the Midnite sound to be, and recorded it. And it's this album. And if you hear this album, you can hear that it's exceptionally different from the previous two albums in a sonic way. And it really sets in what you would call like the signature Midnite sound, like the signature sound of Midnite with his keys and his like haunting little organs, like little X-Files type of keys and stuff, like that real mystic type of way that this album sounds. It really sets the mold for how the following albums to come would reminisce on and be recognized in line with. So Jubilees of Zion, Begin the Day, Kings on the Clothesline. You got my Kings on the Clothesline. Man, this album is so good. I don't know when the last time anyone listened to this album, and it just came out on vinyl. Ron just released this Jubilees of Zion album through TRS Records, and it's a double LP for the first time on vinyl. But if I don't know when the last time anyone listened to this album is, but gotta revisit it. I'm telling you, this is like probably my favorite. Next to Unpolished is my all-time. This has got to be my next favorite Midnite album, you know, or Von Benjamin album. So that was 2000. That was the very beginning of them being relocated, you know, semi-permanently in St. Croix, living in St. Croix, and having their studio in St. Croix, so their home base in St. Croix. And this is also when the lineup became Ron Benjamin on keys, even though he had a lot more to do in the production of this album, guitars and bass and different things. But you know, from this point moving forward live, it was Ron Benjamin on keys, Philip Merchant Jr. on bass, Abijah Peace Ambassador Hicks, Papa on guitar, and Dion Bosie Hopkins on drum, and Bond singing up until I believe it was like 2005, 2006. So that's Jubilees of Zion. Long album, big album, really setting the tone for the official Midnite sound moving forward. And that was in 2000, African Roots Lab. And that was like the first album that like Ronnie Benjamin Jr. produced the whole thing, like, you know, himself. And okay, so that was Jubilees of Zion. Now 2001 is a special time because 2001 marks the debut of the first collaboration that Von Benjamin did with Tippy I, or Laurent Tippy Alfred, and I Grade Records. So this is the dawn of I Grade Records, which is Tippy's label in St. Croix. Tippy collaborating with the musical contributions of a partner in the business, Kenyatta Itola, bass player, Kenyatta Itola, who partnered up to develop I Grade Records, who would play with one another on many of the productions moving forward for a number of years. But this album was the first collaboration album that Tippy did with Vaughn. And it marks the dawn of, as far as official releases go, it marks the dawn of Von Benjamin's collaborations with other production teams, other bands, other groups of musicians in a more controlling way, having his own control over more of the production, as well as collaborative control with the producers and everything. This is not a Ron Benjamin Midnite album as such, even though for a long time, up until about 2015, the moniker was Midnite. The moniker was Midnite, and everyone associated Midnite with Vaughn Benjamin specifically. But to be totally honest, Midnite as a band and musical powerhouse and entity was the collaborative team of Vaughn and Ronnie Benjamin Jr. But this marks the dawn of Vaughn branching out and playing with other people. And, you know, I asked AI for an elaborate answer on what Nemosian Rasta means, because I wanted to cross-examine what it said compared to with what Vaughn told me at the time, or told me to look into. Because that was kind of our relationship. If I asked him questions, he would give me a little something and then reference a few books for me to go seek out more knowledge. Seek knowledge was what he would try to encourage me with. So AI basically said Nemosian means, you know, in reference to Nemosian Rasta is the sound of midnight, specific sound of midnight, and the roots reggae sound of Vaughn singing and the music that he plays on and this and that and this. And that's not, I mean, in a way that could be seen as close to correct. But what Vaughn told me to reference out when I asked him, what's Nemosian? And you can even see it. It says Nemosian Rasta. And then underneath it has the Mnemosyne. Nemosian Rasta. So, well, what is Mnemosyne? So the term Mnemosyne is actually a Greek term, because Vaughn, he really had a thing about comparative and parallel mythology. You'd like to see the Kemetic myths and the Sumerian myths and the African myths as they were appropriated by later cultures like the Phoenicians and like the Greeks and the Romans, and the sort of progression that certain characters or deities or titans or Neteru were then basically extracted from the original system and used as a building block in the new spiritual systems of a more contemporary culture. But there was still deep meaning within them. They held on to the meaning before they tried to bury the meaning and hide the meaning from people who they wanted to have meaningless lives and no roadmap back to consciousness. So Mnemosyne was a goddess. Mnemosyne is the Greek goddess of memory and remembrance. Now, this is really important because this, I think, is a watermark in Vaughn Benjamin's musical legacy, where he began taking more of a controlling form of expression through his music. Because remember, first he was a poet. He was a deep, deep, deep poet, did the slam poetry and stuff like that, did free poetry. And you know, he was incredible with his poetics, Kol Pekud and whatnot. See, so he was like a poet first on top of being a musician as well, and a singer and a songwriter. So in referencing Mnemosyne, Mnemosyne is a Greek goddess of memory and remembrance, a titaness, and the goddess, and the daughter of Uranus, Sky, and Gaia, Earth. She is the most famous for being the mother of the 9 muses by Zeus. By Zeus. The Greek version of Amen. And then Jupiter is the Roman version of Zeus. But so Zeus and Mnemosyne gave birth, slept with one another for 9 consecutive nights. Let me bring you up to speed with it. Mnemosyne is the goddess of memory, name derived from the Greek word mneme, meaning remembrance or memory. She is the mother of the muses. She and Zeus spent 9 consecutive nights together, resulting in the birth of the 9 muses. The significance is because early Greek culture was largely oral, and memory was considered a fundamental building block of civilization. Poets would invoke mnemosyne to help them accurately remember and recite epic poems. The underworld role in Orphism, initiates were taught to drink from the river of mnemosyne, the river of memory, rather than the river of Lethe, which is the river of oblivion, to avoid losing their memories in the afterlife. The 9 muses, and I've heard so many artists, the artists that do the cover art, I've heard other musicians refer to Vaughan Benjamin and the music of Vaughan Benjamin as a muse for them, meaning an inspiration. They derive the inspiration for creating their art from another person or personage or personality or the works of someone else. I've heard artists say, Vaughan was my muse. I would listen to Midnite. I would listen to Akae BEKA, and the visions would come to me of what I wanted to draw or paint. And so those, in referencing muses and musings, like the inspiration of an author, the inspiration of a poet, the inspiration of a musician, you know, that's what a muse is. So the muses between Mnemosyne and Zeus are the inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and the arts. You have Calliope, which is the muse of epic poetry. I want you to hear these things and think about Vaughan for a moment. Think about who he was and what he does and what he did and how he fashioned his unique art in the way he did and why he chose this as the title for this specific album. Calliope, muse of epic poetry. Clio, who's the muse of history. Erato, the muse of love poetry. Euterpe, the muse of music and lyrical poetry. Melpomene, the muse of tragedy. Polyhymne, or polyhymnia, the muse of hymns and sacred poetry. Terpsichore, the muse of dance. Thalia, the muse of comedy, and Urania, the muse of astronomy. And on top of that, the 3 original muses, in Boeotia and Delphi, only 3 muses were often worshipped. Eode, song, Melete, practice, and Neme, memory. The Titanide role of Mnemosyne, sometimes Mnemosyne herself was regarded as one of the original muses. Some accounts, such as those by Pausanias, suggest 2 generations, an elder set, daughters of Uranus and Gaia, and the younger set, daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne. Okay, and that's all we're going to go into with the muses, but that is a breakdown of the Greek goddess of memory who gave birth to the 9 muses, Mnemosyne. So that, and I'm not going to cover all the albums in that depth, but the reason I thought that particular album stood out is because of the title reference to Mnemosyne and what Mnemosyne means when it comes to memory and poetry and art and lyrical musings and everything. And I always thought it was interesting how so many people have drawn so much inspiration out of the works of Vaughan Benjamin, out of the spoken word, out of the poetry, out of the song, out of the word, sound, and power of Vaughan's music. I thought it'd be very befitting had I given you a breakdown like that, as opposed to the AI breakdown that I received when I just typed it in the Google bar. So, all right. So that is the 4th album, Mnemosyne Rasta, in 2001, I-Grade Records. Big up Tippy and I-Grade Records for putting that out. That's also Desiree was on that album. I don't remember if that track with her on the Mosey and Rasta was the very first Desiree track. I know that she had a track featured on the first Talking Roots album by Bambu Station as well. But I believe it was either Mosey and Rasta, because following Mosey and Rasta was Faya by Desiree, her first debut album on I-Grade Records, but that followed Mosey and Rasta. Okay, and Ron did play keys on a couple songs on that specific album, and I believe a song on Asini, but he wasn't really involved at that level of the production of that album. It wasn't an actual Midnite African Roots Lab album. It was a Midnite I-Grade collaboration done by I-Grade Records. And in retrospect, and this isn't just my opinion, in retrospect, I put this album as the first album released that I would call an Akae BEKA album. And as the albums are being released on vinyl, being reissued on vinyl, they're being released, even the ones that were under the Midnite moniker are being released under the name Akae BEKA, because that's a more apt term to define and describe Vaughn Benjamin's body of work, apart from the 9 Midnite albums, full-length Midnite albums that were collaborations musically and lyrically of Vaughn Benjamin and Ronnie Benjamin as the Midnite Band. So, in my opinion, the Mosey and Rasta is the first Akae BEKA album. It will be released as such when I-Grade releases it. Okay, now we're moving to the fifth album, which is Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance. Released in 2002, this is the second album produced at African Roots Lab by Ron Benjamin Jr. And Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance. Incredible album. I got some friends that say that this is their favorite Midnite album of all time. When I say Jubilees is mine, they say this Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance is just too strong, you know, with art and Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance. And so many. Let me see. I got it right here. Let's see. Seek Knowledge, Rise for a Reason, You Don't Know Me. So many of these songs were songs that were played live, that I heard played live before the album was ever released. And I was so excited when it was finally released. You Don't Know Me. New Life, which is the first song that Ronnie Benjamin sang lead on. I believe the only under the name Midnite, and the albums released under the name Midnite, the only song that Ron Benjamin sang lead on was New Life. But songs like Late Night Ghetto, one of my favorite live songs, Dagger Man, Innate, Jehovah, that's probably my favorite track on the album. Kingdom Trees, oh, That's On You. Own a Dirt, actually, that's probably my favorite album because it's so hard. You're on a dirt, that's on you. One Shout, Weed Burn, first big ganja tune on there. So yeah, so there's so many that one album depicts. That's when they're really hitting their stride in the African Roots Lab days. And so we're going to get the others ready. That was 2002 from African Roots Lab. And then the 6th album that was released, and Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance, before we go to the 6th album, Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance is a good mantra. It's a very good mantra. And I, wasn't so sure exactly what it meant when it first was released, but then I realized that, wise is the man that moves quick to anger. There's so much wrong done in the world, and as individuals, so much wrong done to us, that if we seek vengeance first without knowledge, we fail to gain the lesson of how those things came to be. What were the missteps that were in place before we were wronged, and then chose to react vengefully without knowledge in our heart? And then we could probably come up with a better strategy than eye for an eye, leaving the whole world blind. So seek knowledge before vengeance. Use your pain, use your trauma, use your suffering, use your anger and frustration to strengthen your spirit, to strengthen your constitution, to strengthen your body of knowledge, so that you can overcome the pitfalls that we fell a victim to. So seek knowledge before vengeance. And this art on here, now, it looks very reminiscent to the artists that made the majority of the Midnite artwork, but it's attributed to someone named Ninja. There was a couple albums, artwork attributed to someone named Ninja. This one in particular, Ninja with an H. And I believe that this was a drawing that was illustrated by Ninja P, who's a DJ in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. He's a brethren, a DJ, Ninja P Sound VI. You can look him up on Instagram. Now, I haven't seen this artistic work attributed to him, but when I seek out Ninja with an H art, Midnite, Akae BEKA, whatever, the only one I find that really kind of like seems like it would have been is Ninja P. So if that's wrong, hopefully Ninja P will correct me. But this artwork for this album cover is credited to Ninja with an H. Okay, we're going to move forward to the 6th album, which is Asini. Asini. So this is the second Midnite collaboration with I-Grade Records. And this album, once again, incredible, following the heels of Nemosian Rasta, the early I-Grade sound. Now this art on this album was depicted or credited to someone named Nazarite. Now, I don't know if that was just a nickname that was being used by Marcus Wilson, who Marcus Wilson is the artist who has been credited with the vast majority of Vaughn Benjamin's works, whether it be Midnite albums, Akae BEKA albums, whether on Rostar Records, whether on I-Grade Records, so many Raz L, Midnite, African Roots Lab Records. Marcus Wilson is the artist from St. Croix who has the largest body of artistic work that is showcased on the covers of all of Vaughn Benjamin's albums. Not all, but many, many, many of them were illustrated by Marcus Wilson. Now, I don't know if Nazarite was just a nickname that he used at the time, because it looks similar, but then it also looks similar to what Ninja did on Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance, and it was at the same time. So maybe it was another nickname. I don't know if Nazarite is Ninja. I don't know if Ninja is Ninja P. Might just remain a mystery, but maybe someone can put the information down in the comments and we can straighten out the mystery right away. But this album is incredible, following on the heels of Nemosian Rasta. This is at a stage in I-Grade Records production where, it's sort of a mix between live instrumentation, band productions, where there are, live drums and, guitar and proper bass and, percussion and things, as well as compositions that Tippy produced more on, like digital productions, like with the drum machine and keys, and more digital productions that have more of a hip hop flair to them. In fact, a lot of the collaborations that Vaughn did with a lot of different producers had inflections of sort of like a hip hop influence on the production side of things, or a amalgam of hip hop and dance hall and roots and digital era, like digital production kind of shifting, because, you know, it's a lot easier to do that, to get through those kind of productions than it is recording bands, recording different musicians. I mean, it's just, you can do it quicker because it's just you, and you can sit there and break down everything and mix it and master it and all that without having to record all the different musicians or wait on musicians to be available and all that stuff. But this album has a mix, once again, just like Nemozi and Rasta, a mix of both. And Worker Bee, Old Robe, I mean, just incredible songs. In fact, I was speaking with Ishens, and he said this is the first Midnite album he ever got to hear, actually. And I thought that was really interesting, because it you know, that's really what kicked it off for him in getting, you know, engaged in Midnite and Vaughn Benjamin's artistry and everything. And I thought that was very interesting, because that is an incredible album, and it's great. And Good Remnant, got the band track Good Remnant in the Ghetto Street. It's got so many good songs on it. Okay, getting through it. That was 2002, once again released on I-Grade Records, the second release for I-Grade Records, and more in Tippy Alfred. All right, and I believe that was the last album that Ron Benjamin might have played keys on. I thought he only did a couple of songs on Nemozi and Rasta, but I've seen places written that he was credited with a track on keys on Asini. So maybe there was more productions left over from that original project with Nemozi and Rasta that were then released on Asini. Okay, all right. Now, the seventh release is Sifara. This album right here is Sifara. And this is the first release on a Midnite Branch I collaboration. This is in 2003. This is a Branch I collaboration, the first Branch I collaboration. And Branch I was sort of a Midnite side project that Vaughn was doing on the production side with Philip Merchant Jr., the bass player of Midnite at the time, and Dion Bosie Hopkins, the drummer at the time. And it was more, you know, this was more of an experimental and digital production album. Really, the whole Branch I collaboration energy was more of like an experimental digital production based, mostly as far as the drums, not in every instance, but this album for sure. Experimental rhythms, once again, crossing the lines of roots reggae into dancehall, into hip hop production, paving the musical platform for Vaughn to showcase his more hip hop kind of stylings, which is what really generated the root essence of what would become termed as fire chant. So fire chant is a type of lyrical stylings that you could say, you know, generated by a lot of dancehall artists in Jamaica, but was really created into its own sort of subliminal category in St. Croix by artists like Vaughn Benjamin, in specifically, with the stylings like this album and ones to come, and artists like, and his influence on artists like Ancient King and Ja Rubal and Sabbatical Ada and Bobo Ites and Messiah, rest in peace, Messiah, and Lava Volcano. You see, these are all artists out of St. Croix who developed a style known as fire chant. And most of them, I would I haven't spoken to all of them specifically, but most of them, the ones who I have spoken to, would reference Vaughn Benjamin as the major inspiration in pursuing that sort of endless lyrics like a river flow with the choppy sort of fire chant, almost spoken word, almost somewhere between dub poetry and raga dancehall and hip hop, kind of creating this stream of thought, almost inflection through the lyricism, less singing, more of that. And so fire chant is the name of that subcategory of reggae lyricism. And this album is one of the earlier Midnite Collaborations albums to sort of musically set the platform to for Vaughn to experiment with that style of delivery, as opposed to his more singing out and roots chanting out the way that he would do on the earlier Midnite albums and even the I Grade albums. Even though, I Grade, a lot of hip hop, experimental hip hop sonic frequency within the productions of the I Grade records at the time too. And with other collaborators to come, you'll see it's very much a reoccurring theme. And Vaughn, he was a poet, he was a singer, songwriter, lyricist, fire chanter. Some would even say a hip hop artist. And I even heard some stories about Bad Boy wanting to sign him, but well, not a bad boy, a good man. So that never came to pass. So anyway, we're going to move on from Sephiroth in 2003 as being the first Branch I production to the first dub album of Midnite. Now, this is an African Roots Lab album. This is an African Roots Lab recorded, engineered, put together, mastered, released by Ronnie Benjamin and Midnite. Now, this is called Intense Pressure Dub. And this was studio works from African Roots Lab. A couple that were released after vocal versions like Jubilees of Zion. And there's a couple that were released after the lyrical versions were released on Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance or Jubilees of Zion. But most of the tracks on here were only ever released as the dubs. And if Ronnie has them, has the lyrical versions of them, I hope the vocal versions of them, I hope they get released at some point, because they were such strong tunes. I mean, Baba, when we did the Message in the Music stuff, we did Message in the Music, and this album played a huge role in the backing that we had of a lot of putting the different lectures and different speakers in recorded in the lectures and recordings of them with the dub playing underneath. I mean, this album was pivotal for those works. And it's an incredible album. It's an incredible dub album. If you're a fan of dub, if you're a fan of Midnite, I mean, it's as signature Midnite as you can get. And that's all I'm really going to say about that album. But that's the first dub album Midnite ever put out. And that's the only dub album that Ronnie Benjamin did for Vaughn. Okay. Intense Pressure. That was in 2003. Now we're going back to I Grade Records in 2003 as well. This is when the releases start being like 2-3 albums in a year, 4 albums in a year. Like this is when he really starts just churning away. Like, I don't know if Vaughn, I would be foolish to say Vaughn wasn't rich with premonition, but I don't know if he had a premonition that maybe his life wasn't going to be, he wasn't going to be long for this world. So he just really intensified his output. He didn't waste time. He was, had the hardest work ethic. What I've heard from these producers is that he had the hardest work ethic and more determined work ethic than anyone that they knew. Like it was just moving forward. It was just pushing forward and getting stuff out and getting stuff recorded, getting it. So muted. There we go. 2003 is Vision, which is a Midnite I-Grade collaboration from I-Grade Records. This is the third I-Grade Records album. And it's great. It's a great album. You know, it's you can see, I believe this album is Marcus Wilson. The art on it is Marcus Wilson, I believe. And, you know, once again, stronger and stronger live instrumentation rhythms being put on the albums, more and more of the actual live band compositions being put on the albums, while also having plays for Tippy's, you know, digitally produced tracks and, you know, drum machine based tracks and hip hop influence sort of production as well. You know, there's a big hybrid sort of fusion going on between, like, you know, kind of like R&B, hip hop, dance hall roots amalgam, which ironically is what's going on in the music today. And people are calling it a new thing. People are saying, like, oh, they're calling it crossover reggae and new wave reggae production, where people aren't doing strictly like roots, like steppers and one drop and rockers anymore. It's sort of, you're looking at the renaissance of reggae artists right now, that are doing a mix between, you know, hip hop and dance hall and reggae and pop and R&B, sort of creating a whole different sound. Well, this isn't that new at all. Like, this has been going on, and it was going on before I-Grade was doing it. You know, it was going on in New York. I mean, it was going on with you know, KRS-One and Jamal Ski, and you know, it was going on when, you know, Mad Cobra and Terror Fabulous and Shabba Ranks were all blowing up in the United States. And you even had a Capleton, was it I Testament, the Capleton album that was all like hip hop beats with Capleton doing his thing. So, you know, this is, the more things change, the more they stay the same, and there's nothing new under the sun. We give thanks for all the creativity that went into all of these productions, but it's almost like history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes, is a saying. So, but at this time, we're seeing I-Grade Records building itself into a stronger sort of roots production powerhouse, refining its live recording potential for live instrumentation, as well as expanding on the experimentation of like hip hop and sort of crossover sounds, with Vaughn flexing all of his various creativity and lyrical muscles on all of these different sounds. So Vision is a great example of that. All right, so we're gonna move on.
I don't want to cut you. What I was saying earlier, bro, and I didn't, sorry to, you know, I messed that up, was that when I would buy all of the albums, like you said, he was coming out with 2, 3, 4, got to the point where I couldn't even keep up, but he had his own website. You remember that, where you could go on there? It wasn't iTunes, none of these other platforms. You went directly on his website, I believe, or his affiliate website, to get them more directly with him. I think a lot of the artists need to really, that's a blueprint that they could follow to, you know, maybe knock these middlemen out of the way. You know, YouTube and all. That's why I try not to put too much, and if I do, it's just maybe one song for solely promotional purposes. But you need to go and support the artist, and the artist needs to be a little bit more independent and follow that blueprint. Bob Marley too, and Von Benjamin, how they control their own, they seem to control uh, their own material a little bit more. That's all I wanted to say. I don't want to get sidetracked because you got a lot more work to do. Sorry about that.
No, 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 thank you. But you're absolutely right. And it's something we've been talking about on your channel for years now, which is like, how can artists get ownership and control over their own distribution? Not necessarily that they need a lot of more work to do other than writing and creating artistic music, because that's what they really are. I mean, they're the artists, why they got to do all the mailing stuff that people do. But like, there's got to be a way, especially in the digital era where 90% of the sales are people downloading it off of a website anyway. How do artists showcase digital versions of their albums on their website that can be downloaded into iTunes, their iTunes library, or whatever their musical library is? Because it's easier today than it was. Exactly what you're talking about. When Midnite had their own website, and when a new album came out, whether it was I Grade, whether it was Branch I, whether it was African Roots Lab, you had to wait for it to get released on the Midnite website and order it directly from them in order to receive it. And we didn't have no huge files of digital recordings on our computers. We didn't even barely use the computer. You and me barely use the computer at this time when this stuff is coming out, so it's like, it was harder back then to be the person selling your own albums than it is today, where everyone's just buying it off the computer anyway. How much harder is it to go to Higherbound Records to download this album than it is to buy it off of iTunes? And really at this point, a lot of them want you to go to iTunes and just buy it from there, because at least they get some of the money instead of streaming, where they're getting a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of nothing. And Apple and Amazon and all the rest of them are getting all the money for the streaming. Whereas at least with iTunes, if you're going to buy a digital copy, they're getting a far greater percentage of what you're paying to download, instead of just streaming it and not giving the artists or production team any money at all. But you're absolutely right, Baba. And that's something that it wasn't that long ago, but things are changing, and we got to figure out how to change it in the right direction, so that there's incentive for artists and producers and engineers and musicians to keep doing what they're doing. Otherwise, they won't be able to afford to even be interested in doing it. And then the AI music alternative will become the replacement right before our eyes. We'll see people preferring to listen to AI music than actually supporting artists. And that's the fault of the consumer and how we choose to consume music, and what we take for granted and think just happens all of a sudden, when it's actually a whole lot of work. Like, we're reading 77 albums worth of really hard work that people did over 25 years, 26 years. And I mean, I don't know how much money was generated from all these albums overall, but I guarantee you a lot more money's generated through streaming and digital downloading than any of the hard media ever accrued for these artists. So, but you're absolutely right, Bubba. So Geoman is number 10. This is the 10th album that was released, Vaughn's 10th album. And once again in 2003, just like Vision, just like Intense Pressure, all in 2003, Geoman was the Branch I collaboration, once again, between Philip Merchant Jr., bass player at the time, and Dion and Vaughn collaborating to make this Branch I, which, had a few live instrumentation tracks, but a lot of like recorded. What I keep calling digital production is more recordings that utilized synthesizers and keyboards and drum machines and those type of programs to create the sounds and produce the sounds, as well as like basses and guitars here and there and stuff, but far more digitally produced albums than just what we would call like live instrumentation, like Roz Makepeace or Unpolished, and this album, Geoman, once again, Branch I, similar mix of sort of hybrided experimental rhythms as well as live musical rhythms for Vaughn to really, really just have more creative control, of the canvases which he would illustrate his art verbally on, instead of just, his brother's productions. His brother's productions were basically being held for the official Midnite releases. And all of this experimentation he was doing with these collaborations with different engineers and musicians and everything, that was Vaughn Benjamin. That's why I refer to all of these collaborations, whether Branch I, whether I Grade Records, as Akae BEKA. I see it as Akae BEKA. I see Midnite, the name Midnite, as more those 9 albums in total of all of these albums we're talking about, those 9 albums that he did in conjunction with his brother, as well as all the live performances over the years and decades and decades and decades, with Ronnie at the helm being the orchestrator and conductor of the Midnite band. I see that as Midnite. I see the African Root Labs albums as Midnite. I see Unpolished and Roz Make Peace as Midnite. All these other collaborations I personally always saw before I even knew what of Akae BEKA, or that there was a different name. In my mind, I already classified it under a different category than Midnite. And now we can say Akae BEKA. And as these albums are being released, they're being released as Akae BEKA, which I think is a good thing because it's different. And once again, the Mosey Zion didn't break the mold. It fashioned a different form of delivery of Vaughn's music, to where he was literally experimenting with a more poetic delivery of his lyrics and literary substance, and his academia mixed with his perspective of science and biology and metaphysics and spirituality, and once again beyond, as we should have started the whole thing, which I failed, my failure to do, was honoring the king. Never fail to make mention of the king. Like, his works are consistently in line with devotion to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. His works are consistently rooted in a very unique and eclectic splendence of African spirituality, African psychology, African philosophy. He didn't simp for slackness at all. He didn't try to make hits. He didn't do it for the clicks or the likes. He didn't do it to impress anybody else, his contemporaries, the people he admired in reggae music or Rastafari. He didn't do anything he did for anyone but the king, in a very unique and creative way. And continuously through his whole archive of music, you'll see first and foremost honor and reverence of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, Rastafari Makona. So Rasta to the bone is right. Rasta to the bone, which is on Jubilees of Zion, by the way. Okay, so we're gonna bring it to, it was Geoman. Oh no, yeah. No, that's perfect. He is Ja. This is the 11th release. That he did. And once again, it's a Branch I collaboration. But what I've heard, this album specifically, this is another one in 2003. This is how many albums in 2003? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 4th album he released in the year 2003. And this is a Branch I collaboration, which is him and Philip Merchant and Dion Hopkins. But I heard that Roz Batch, another Rastafari reggae musician from St. Croix, as well as, producer and drummer, and, made his own albums and worked with a lot of other artists, Roz Attitude in particular. helping bring more recognition and prominence to Ra's attitude in St. Croix. Incredible artist. He was involved, from what I've heard, he was involved in the collaborative energies of this Branch I album, He Is Jah, and actually aided in a lot of the productions, or assisted in some capacity in a number of the productions on this album, He Is Jah. So that's something that I don't know if he's credited on the album. I don't have a hard copy anymore. I mean, all my hard copies melted in a fire, but like, I don't have a hard copy anymore of it to reference that. And I haven't been able to really find that, but I did find some things alluding to that. And I've talked to a number of DJs who were friends with Vaughn, who said that's how the lore goes, is that this particular album, that Raz Batch was involved in production of this album along with the Branch I team and Vaughn, of course. All right. So that was He Is Jah, and that one is Branch I collaboration, released and distributed under Rastafaria. Rastafaria, once again, is Preston Powell's production label. Not that Preston Powell is running a studio or producing the tracks or recording them. He's helping with the distribution. He's the one putting money towards pressing CDs, distributing the CDs, the manufacturing of the hard copies. Because once again, at this time, there's not a whole lot of digital stuff, at least in this genre, being used at this time. People are still buying CDs. People are still buying CDs at this point. And in order to sell the CDs, you need to press the CDs. Press the CDs. You got to have money to do that. Preston Powell, God bless him, just like he did with Unpolished, just like he has done with a number of other albums, he put up money to press these albums and to release them. I believe Unpolished, by the way, to dovetail back just for a second, Unpolished was actually like reissued in a large capacity in 2001. It was in 2001 that he actually reissued Unpolished, to where a lot of people didn't really get it. We did, because we were in DC. Namibia, they got it in Africa before any of us. But at that time that they made those, they also had a bit that circulated around Washington, DC. And that's where we got it. But then they made a bunch in 2001 and reissued it. And Rastafaria was the one who pressed it, Preston Powell. So big up Preston on doing that. And Preston was involved on that capacity of the production side for He Is Jah in 2003. All right, now Branch I. All right, Project 3. Branch I, once again. So this is a Branch I collaboration. Philip Merchant, Dion Hopkins, Vaughn Benjamin. And this is Project 3. This is the first release of 2004. And this is a Branch I collaboration, Rastafaria, Preston Powell, putting up money to produce it, as well as, not Rastafaria, Natural Vibes. So Natural Vibes, big up Natural Vibes. Natural Vibes is Raz Jah Red out of St. Croix. And Raz Jah Red runs a culture shop called Natural Vibes in St. Croix, where he sells herbs and hygiene products and all the good things for the people, them health tonic, root tonic, and all them thing, and books. He sells like herbs and books for the mind, food for the body, food for the soul, food for the mind. And he also runs an organization, or is involved in running of an organization called House of Rastafari, which is a Rastafari organization, a cultural social group that organizes and puts on events and gets behind projects. As you'll hear, some of these later albums are a tribute to being produced by House of Rastafari, and that's Raz Jah Red, that's Raz Siku Tafari, and big up Raz Jah Red and Natural Vibes. He is listed as being one of the co-producers of this Branch I album, which probably means he paid to press up all the CDs and get them out to the people. Project 3 is good. Project 3 is really good. It's another Branch I. I feel like this is the Branch I project that has the most live instrumentation, like Permit Zion and live instrumentation, a couple songs that you would hear them play like live that weren't on Midnite albums, actual Midnite albums. So there was a bit more live instrumentation and production on this, also as well as like programmed production and stuff. But this is a Branch I production, and I believe this is the final Branch I collaboration release that they did together as Midnite Branch I. Yeah, it's a good album though. It's really good. So that was 2004, and then that was just before the release of the next African Roots Lab album, which is the 13th Vaughn Benjamin album to come out, which is Scheme of Things. Scheme of Things. Excuse me, just one moment. Beautiful artwork by Marcus Wilson. I believe that previous picture from Project 3 was Marcus Wilson as well. Marcus Wilson has done the vast majority, well over 50 albums for Vaughn Benjamin through all of the eras on all different labels and stuff. So, you know, I'm trying to hit some of the ones as we go of who that is and who that is and who that is. But many of them are Marcus Wilson. And this one is a Marcus Wilson album as well, as I believe Project 3 was. So Scheme of Things, this is the first of 2 African Roots Lab albums that will be released in this year. And they were released like either one right after the other. I kind of remember them being released at the same time. Like I think Scheme of Things and Ancient Maps came out like almost at the exact same time. But either way, they were both released in the same year, and they were both African Roots Lab productions. And this album was aided in distribution by Rastafaria, Preston Powell. And yeah, it's a really good one. It's uniquely different. So it's uniquely different from even the other album that came out. It's almost like when I heard it, I was like, Midnite's kind of doing something different, like kind of trying out different sounds and different, you know, it wasn't so minor key and slow and one droppy. There was a lot of different, more bright tunes on it and different kind of drum patterns on it and everything. And I was like, oh, this is an actual Midnite album. But I really feel like it sounds a bit different. And then I listened to Ancient Maps and I was like, oh, there it is. Like Ancient Maps is like very much in that Midnite, deep Midnite type of vibe. But this one was almost like this was an experimental album that Ron was doing, where he was experimenting with some different stuff with Scheme of Things. And so that was African Roots Lab Scheme of Things. And we're going to break up the Midnite releases, because in the same year at number 14 is Full Cup. So this is the first Midnite Raz L collaboration. So Raz L, otherwise known as Raz Element, is an artist who really cut his teeth doing personal productions for different artists in St. Croix, like Sister Joyce, like Lava Volcano, different artists. Itinua Ja, I think, is the name of one of his compilations with a number of different artists. He produced a lot of stuff on his own and for artists on their own. But he eventually became, when Ron Benjamin switched from playing keys in the live ensemble of Midnite to playing bass, he was eventually brought in temporarily. Ankh Watep filled in, another VI artist. But then Raz L, or Raz Element, was the one who um who came and replaced Guatep in playing keys, and that's Rozelle is Lyndon Williams, nicknamed Rozelle or Roz Element. And big up Rozelle. He has been producing music for artists independently for a long time, and very unique creativity in his production. With this album in specific, it was definitely, I would label this album as solid Dyed in the Wool Fire Chant album of Vaughn Benjamin's. This is far more not what you would come to expect as the slow minor one drop roots style of Vaughn Benjamin. This is far more experimenting with like sort of glitchy dance hall rhythms with like hip hop aspects to them, all sorts of very electronic effects over things. It's a very experimental album, and Vaughn's flow is very fire chant. Like if you want to know what fire chant is, I would say listen to this album, because this is almost like this is probably the closest thing you could say to a Vaughn Benjamin hip hop album that you could find, like through and through. So it's this album as Rozelle. Oh yeah, and by the way, so not only did Rozelle come and was the keyboard player for Midnite for a long time, when Midnite became the Akae BEKA band, he was the one who went over and began playing bass with the Akae BEKA ensemble. So the guy who was playing bass, and when you saw him live, the guy who used to play keys with Midnite and then was playing bass when it was Akae BEKA, that's Rozelle. That's Roz Element. And his early stuff used to be called Rozelle Productions, and now it's Roz Element Productions, spelled Elyment. And he's been doing some tremendous stuff, did some productions with Desiree, released Art of Standing Up by Akae BEKA, released an album with Abja, Raz Abja out of St. Croix, another artist heavily influenced with the fire chant, roots chant style of Vaughn Benjamin, incredibly potent artist. One of my favorite artists from St. Croix, Virgin Islands, is Raz Abja. And so Rozelle is all over the show. But this album is the very first collaboration Rozelle did production-wise with Vaughn Benjamin in 2004. And it's House of Rastafari is cited as the producer or production assist in this. So most likely House of Rastafari, Raz Ja Red, invested in making hard copies of this album to distribute. So big up Raz Ja Red once again. Big up Raz Siku Tafari. Big up Raz Element each and every time. Full cup. Incredibly unique album. It's different. And that's Marcus. That's Marcus Wilson. You can even see his signature down by the feet of the gold entity, the gold laden entity there. And so now we're gonna move it along to Ancient Maps. So, yeah, that's right. Ancient Maps. This is one of my favorites. This is truly one of my favorites. And this is 2000. Let me just make sure I got the 2004 African Roots Lab, came out right after Scheme of Things, and had the deep, Livity, Drought, True King, Breathing Scrolls. I mean, just so many good songs on this album. And it's just that very much Midnite, mystic, minor key, deep, one drop, signature Midnite sound that people fell in love with over the years, from Unpolished and Raz Make Peace through Jubilees of Zion and Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance. And this album was what they were waiting for, and what they got, it did not fail to impress at all. It certainly didn't fail to impress me. It was strong. It was strong. I liked this one a lot. And I liked Scheme of Things too, but I was kind of surprised with Scheme of Things, because now that Vaughn had trodden on the path where he was doing collaborations with other producers, I was used to those other productions not sounding like I expected Midnite to sound. But when African Roots Lab released a Midnite album that sounded different as well, I was kind of surprised and was like, wow, now they're coming with a different sound. But then this album dropped and I was like, no, they ain't. Boom, there it is. That's what I was longing for. That's that mother's milk. Here we go. And so incredible album. Now this album marks a significant period in the Midnite band legacy as well, because this album was the last album to include Philip Merchant playing bass, Abijah Hicks on guitar, and Dion Hopkins on drums. This is the last album, not only that they will be on the album, but it was also marked kind of the end of them being part of the Midnite band in their live performances as well. Which, you know, it's tough, man. Like, I really like that lineup. Like, me and Baba, like, we saw them 100 times, it felt like. And they just kept getting better and better and better. And that was actually the lineup that saw Midnite's rise to national popularity, like international, like beyond just being and they were never just a local band anywhere they were, whether they were in St. Croix, whether they were in Washington, D.C., whether they did a show in Baltimore or New York or whatever. Anyone who was present for any of those shows from the late 90s on up knew that you weren't just watching a local band, that you were watching an exceptionally unique musical project that is something you've never heard before. But as far as national recognition and demand for touring and demand for travel in order to go do festivals and shows and, you know, go to Puerto Rico, go to here, go to there, and go to these festivals on the West Coast as well as everywhere. It was this lineup. It was this lineup that was together doing it at that time. And some of the most incredible shows that I can remember was that lineup personally for me. And I really missed that lineup when the lineup shifted, you know, and just something to throw in as an extra that can be found is there's a recording that's, you know, on YouTube. I don't think it was ever really officially released. I know a lot of people, Drake was talking about it as an inspirational album he used to listen to. It's the show they did when they first started going to the West Coast. I want to say it was in 2004. It was 2004 or 2005, but it was when they first started going to the West Coast, and they performed in Eugene, Oregon, and Midnite Live in Eugene. And I believe 2004, might be 2005, but it's Midnite Live in Eugene, and it's a live show, and it's recorded on the soundboard. It's recorded on the soundboard, and it's that lineup. And you can tell that Vaughn was intentionally singing the songs out slower and more thoroughly. And when he would do the Fire Burn the Merciless, and he'd do his big intro where he just run through all the stuff he was singing, he did it slow so that people could hear it. And it's a very clean recording. And if you really want to get what he was saying and hear some of the essence of what that lineup was bringing, it's a really good recording. Live in Eugene, Oregon, 2004, I believe. But this album was the last album with that lineup, and the last album that African Roots Lab would actually produce for Vaughn until 2010. So that's six years hiatus from Ronnie and Vaughn releasing a Midnite album. And, you know, they were focusing on live. They were touring hard. They got a different lineup together. and they were touring hard, and Vaughn was mainly doing productions with other studios and production teams. So, but Ancient Maps, man, huge one. Don't sleep on that. Really good. I got it right here. Go down. Praise Jah, Livity, Drought, Maintain, Abaddon Abyss, Judgment for Sentence, Ancient Maps, Nakafaya, True King, Breathing Scrolls, Dub Plate, and a Rose. All big dyed in the wool Midnite tunes. All right, and that's Marcus. That's Roz Marcus Wilson. You can see his signature right there. That's one of his works right there. Okay, now we're going to go through all these albums that came out in the 6 years. Live. That's another good one. So Let Live is 2006. I-Grade Records. Big collaboration, you know, with Lauren Tippy Alfred and Vaughn Benjamin. And I believe Kenyatta was still involved at this time. And artists like Tough Lion and Tyrone Davis on drums, T-Rock on drums. And once again, a mix of live instrumentation production with like slow one-drop roots. Vaughn doing the slow one-drop I-Grade root style, as well as, you know, program productions with more hip-hop influence and a little dancehall influence and experimental influence in there to sort of cleanse the palette, as it were, and give Vaughn something different to ride on. But that album was good. That album was really good. I like that. And that's the beginning of 2006, you know, so there was a bit of a year off. Like, you took like 2005 was a year off. And but not at all, because they were working so hard live and getting a new band together and just charging hard on the live circuit. I mean, it probably wasn't a lot of time to spend time in a studio working on things, you know. So so this is the beginning of 2006. I-Grade Records, Let Live. Once again, Marcus Wilson on the art. Incredible art. And okay, now, and that is the 16th album. Now we're going to move to the 17th album, which is Jah Grid. Jah Grid. Once again, I-Grade Records. This came out in 2006 as well. So this is when Tippy and Vaughn really got churning on putting out this stuff. And this album, I'd say that this particular album, I love this album. But I'm kind of a roots head. I'm kind of like an old-fashioned traditionalist. I love like live instrumentation. I got mad love for the creative experimental stuff and electronic production and all that stuff and everything. But like, my personal preference, like, if it doesn't have live drums in it, it's taken a huge blow, in my opinion, because I just got to have real drums, love real bass, real horns, all these things. The more natural it is, the more I can feel it personally, and more it just rides through every cell in my body. So this album, Jah Grid, I'd say is the first I-Grade collaboration album with Vaughn that is basically live roots instrumentation production through and through. Like, the whole album is like roots, is like live band roots production, meaning, you know, real instruments and stuff. So as compared to the previous album of that same year, Let Live, which is like a combination of the two, this is when the I-Grade sound begins to take a turn for more consistently live instrumentation. And I think Tippy is really starting to hone his recording and engineering and mastering capacity at this time. And, you know, and he was working with a lot of other artists at that time, which I'm not focusing on now because we're focusing on Vaughn, but he was a pivotal part of like bringing a lot of these Virgin Island artists from St. Thomas and St. Croix, and even from like Guyana, Yahadanai, making albums for all of these artists that were really cutting edge at the time and very exceptional at the time, and were the albums that really made me fall in love with the VI reggae scene outside of just Midnite. I started hearing all these artists from the Star Lion family and St. Thomas and St. Croix, who, you know, Ancient King and Nayora and Army and Raz Abja, you know, with Red Eye Hour and Mahogany Road and all these albums that are just incredible that you know, he was working on at that time. And this album in particular, as far as the Midnite production goes, really marks a delineation between doing a lot more of his like experimental and crossover sort of program production into like really fleshing out the albums with more and more live band instrumentation stuff. And it's a great one. It's a great Royal Habit, Dog and Rabbit. Yeah. It's a good one. Okay, so that's Ja Grid 2006, and then another one from 2006. The first collaboration is exactly this. Current in 2006 with Mystic Vision, and with the help of the production assist by Natural Vibes. Once again, Raz Ja Red out of St. Croix, Raz Ja Red with Natural Vibes helping with printing up these albums in the collaboration of Mystic Vision, which is a very digital production, digitally produced on the music side, digitally produced music album with, you know, other live instruments and everything, but a collaborative effort, which would be the first one with what's the brethren's name? Let me get it right. Well, Dre Z Melody. Many people know him as Dre Z Melody, but his name is Juan Andres Estrada. Juan Andres Estrada, who is Dre Z Melody, along with Joseph General, is the collaboration that makes up Mystic Vision. And big up Raz Elijah, because Raz Elijah Tafari is the one who painted this art right here and paints a number of other, is responsible for a lot of the other artwork. Other than Marcus Wilson, Raz Elijah is the artist who's most associated and identified with a lot of Akae BEKA and Midnite albums and artwork and all sorts of projects. He's an incredible artist, a phenomenal thinker, speaker, lecturer, author, and artist, and just incredibly inspiring art. I can just sit there and look at his art for hours and hours and hours, because there's so much symbology all riddled through it, that you can just take a lot of time with it. And it's beautiful when you get to see it more than just an album cover. It's beautiful when you get to see the portraits and the actual art on the canvas in a large scale, and really just get to see it and study it. It's incredible. So big up Raz Elijah Tafari each and every time. And he's tight with Dre Z Melody and the Mystic Vision crew over there in New Mexico. And this is oh, here it is. Current 2006, and production assistance from Raz Ja Red. We said that. Raz Ja Red, Natural Vibes, and Mystic Vision for the 18th album, which is Current. I personally, I like this is great, and Vaughn wasn't so particular as to have, like, he really, you know, he was like, I want the musician to bring me their vision of what they want me on. And one thing that always struck me about Vaughn Benjamin is in speaking with people who produced him on numbers of different collaborations and albums, the majority of this work, of this huge, vast body of work, I've often said that Vaughn put more lyrics in one song of substance than most people put in, like, on a whole album or even their whole career, let alone a single album, you know. And the majority of the tracks he made, he literally didn't want to have a preemonition of what he wanted to do before he was in the studio. He didn't even want to hear a lot of the rhythms before he was in his creative mode. He would get to the studio and he would listen to the rhythm, and then he would just write a song to it right then, just literally write out the lyrics that he was feeling right then and put it all there, and then deliver it. And it's very, very few, maybe like 20% of the 30% of the time I heard someone quote that he actually had stuff written down that he wanted to incorporate into a track. But most of the time he just let inspiration hit him and he wrote it out then, in very much a similar way that he would do his live performances. If you saw him as these years progress, you would see that he would strike up a song, sing a chorus for the song, sing maybe a verse, and then go into a stream of consciousness. And every time you heard that song, it would be slightly different. He would be pulling things out in real time. He would be channeling from the divine in real time. And if you were present, you would be able to hear what he, something that only you were present for. You and the people there were present to be a part of. And that was amazing. So big up that, and big up Mystic Vision and Current. So this is the 19th album we're at. The second Midnite Raz L collaboration, Through and True. Through and True, once again, following in the line of Full Cup, is an experimental album that Raz L uniquely crafted. His sort of hip hop, dancehall, reggae influenced digital productions in a unique way for Vaughn to be able to creatively surf on the sounds in a way that, once your people come to know you as the lead singer of Midnite, it might be hard, and they hear all your I-grade releases and they hear these, it's almost like people want to make slow minor key one drop songs for you because that's what they're used to hearing you on. And I imagine as though it would have been very refreshing for Vaughn to be given something so unorthodox compared to the orthodox roots reggae that he was performing on normally, to be given something like Through and True or Full Cup from Raz L, that people who just want to hear him flex vocally and lyrically in a way that they don't often see or get from these other albums. This is one of those albums. So big up Raz Element, big up the Raz L collaborations with Through and True. And yeah, I believe that's Marcus Wilson as well as the art for that album. Okay, so Through and True, and that was 2006. Rastafaria, once again, Preston Powell assisting with that. And okay, now we're going to go to the 20th album. Marks the 20th album of Vaughn Benjamin, New 1000, 2006. Once again with Mystic Vision, the New Mexico crew, posse and crew, along with Full Grown Records. It's New 1000. This one has been released, one of the ones to be released on vinyl under Akae BEKA. And, basically giving a platform for Vaughn to express his unique poetic delivery of his music on this album. So this is the second Mystic Vision. Once again, Mystic Vision and Full Grown Records collaborating in 2006 with New 1000. So that was the 20th album. We're going to go to the 21st album with Sons of Atom, SUNS of Atom, in 2006, which is the first album that that Vaughn did with Lion Tribe, i.e. Fifth Son Records. And Fifth Son Records is Joaquin Wilson, who controls Fifth Son Records, along with Lion Tribe. I believe Lion Tribe was the band aspect, and Fifth Son was Joaquin Wilson's production label. And this is the first Joaquin of quite a few collaborations with Joaquin Wilson, Fifth Son, and Vaughn Benjamin. And Fifth Son albums are very rootsy, like very roots, have all live instrumentation, very slow rhythms, usually live horns, interesting to hear them with like actual like horn ensembles and different kind of instruments. And yeah, it's a great album. I actually early on, like I really preferred of all the collaborations that I was hearing. I really enjoyed the Fifth Son collaborations because they're really more my speed. They're really more like my roots sensibilities felt nurtured in that because it had more just live instrumentation, Vaughn singing with the live band. It just sounded roots, solid roots through and through. So big up. And that album in particular really caught me by surprise. And I really liked it. So Fifth Son, Vaughn Benjamin, Sons of Adam, 2006. All right, now we're going to 2007 with A Need, which is the 22nd album released by Vaughn Benjamin. And this is on Groundbreaking Records. Groundbreaking Records is run by Donnie Dread. Donnie Dread is a reggae artist and producer in St. Croix and was actually one of the pivotal collaborators with Tippy on his musical journey into production, and also making Nemozi and Rasta. But Tippy began making beats in New York, I believe, with Donnie Dread, also from St. Croix, and collaborating with him on hip hop and reggae beats, which is what was the dawning of I-Grade Records. So Donnie Dread is a big collaborator with Tippy at the time, and Groundbreaking Records is his personal label. And Set I Pace, I believe is the name of Donnie Dread's album, his own album that he released himself on Groundbreaking Records. And and this is a good album. This is actually a really nice one. I really liked some of the songs on this album, and very unique. I think Vaughn gave him something pretty special with this album, because it definitely took a different tone. It sounded a bit different than a lot of the other stuff he was working on at the time. So we're going to move on from the 22nd to the 23rd album, which is huge. Yeah. Now, Rule the Time, huge album. I really like this album. And this, I think, is following in stride with Ja Grid, where it's substantially more live instrumentation with musicians and wicked songs. And it's got a few of his other more experimental productions on it, but you can definitely tell he's starting to lean in a direction that he set with Ja Grid, where I-Grade is becoming more known and recognized for their sort of traditional roots production. And the production level is starting to level up. Like Rule the Time, the quality of the sound of production on there versus Nemozi and Rasta, like you can tell that Tippy's starting to really calibrate how he's recording things, how he's engineering, how he's mixing and mastering things. It's really, coming up to a whole nother level. And Rule the Time is great. And look at that cover, man. Like, look at that cover. That's Marcus Wilson once again. Rule the Time. That's incredible. Yeah, I really like seeing the covers on this large screen. So big up Marcus Wilson once again. Big up I-Grade Records. I don't know if Kenyatta Itola was still on bass at this time. I know that Kenyatta ended up moving and wasn't really with I-Grade as much. Eventually, I don't know if it was this time yet or not. I'd have to go look at the credits, but I definitely know that like Tippy was kind of leveling up his production at this point, and this album is significantly Like, this is a great album. This is one of my favorite I Grade albums, actually, to be honest. Rule of Time. That's 2007. And then we have the first the first Rastar collaboration. So now Rastar is incredible label, and has done a lot of stuff with Vaughn at the time. And Nasiamaj Uhuru, otherwise known as Ebna Makonnen, or otherwise known as Nasiamaj Uhuru, is who runs Rastar Records. And this is the first of his Rastar collaborations with Vaughn Benjamin. And this is my personal favorite of the Rastar collaborations, because he does utilize in a similar way a lot of more programmed digital production, a lot of live instrumentation production, but Jamaican artists used to make this album, Rastar's Jamaican production. This is, and you could say this is the first time Vaughn Benjamin starts to work at a production and release level with a Jamaican production team or Jamaican producer. So big up Ebna Makonnen or Nasiamaj Uhuru. And I believe, I could be getting this wrong, maybe you can correct this. I believe Ebna is the nephew of Ducky Simpson of Black Uhuru, but I could have that wrong. But I believe he is. I believe Ebna Makonnen is the nephew of Ducky Simpson. But Rastar Records is his label, and this is the first, and it's got a lot of great, like, his Train Filled the Temple, and also it's a really good rootsy. It was really nice hearing Vaughn singing tracks on like some really nice roots production from Jamaica. You know what I'm saying? Like roots artists, and not stuff that was used all over the place for a lot of artists, but like were used for this album, as well as mixed in with his more experimental programmed production as well. But usually in a roots fashion, roots style. So big up Better World Rasta, big up Ebna Makonnen, big up Rastar Records. And that's the first one from Rastar in 2007. All right. And also in 2007 marks another first, which is Infinite Quality. Infinite Quality is Luster King Productions, which is Andrew Moonbane and Corin Askal. Corin Askal is Andrew Moonbane's partner for Luster King Productions. Well before there was a Zion I Kings, which is a collaboration between I Grade, Zion High Productions, and Luster Kings. There was Luster Kings doing their own thing. Andrew Moonbane and Corin Askal in 2007 did Infinite Quality, and this is their first production with Vaughn on Infinite Quality, which I've had a lot of people tell me is like their favorite non-Midnite album. And it's incredible. It's got some acoustic songs. It's got a lot of, once again, experimental hip hop beat type of hip hop dance hall, sort of high vibe frequency crossover type of sound. And then some nice, really good roots productions. It's a great album. It's a tremendous album. So big up Moon, enough respect. Big up Corin Askal. It's a great album, great one to have in the archive, no doubt. Infinite Quality, and there was a dub that was made of that eventually later on. We're going to cover that. But 2007, we're going to keep going. Now 2007 marks a pivotal album, which is the first production with Higher Bound Productions, which is Ryan Ishance Willard collaborating with Vaughn Benjamin on Bless Go Round. Now, big up Ishance. Ishance down in, Grass Valley, Northern California region, linking up with Vaughn, years before with the when they were out there doing toward Monterey Bay Fest and everything, and linking him and really, really creating without going too deep into it, really creating a bond that lasted the whole of life, really kindred spirits, kindred brethren, kindred musical partners on the mission. Ishans had already been made his album and did an album for Biblical, I believe, and Sis the Cat, and working with a lot of artists out of Northern California on a sort of reggae and hip hop sort of hybrid, really a lot more leaning on the hip hop side of things with the productions. But there was a big Rastafari reggae music impact and influence on there. Once again, I said earlier, he said he heard Asini, and that's what made him really dial in with Midnite, and then was able to make Vaughn's acquaintance, at the Monterey Bay Festival, and was able to start building with him from there. And then this album was his first collaboration with him in that direction. Now, this album is more, a lot of Ishans on his own. He playing keys, playing guitar, incredible musician, programming the drums and everything. A lot more of that early hip hop influence in the production style of this album compared to the ones that would come later. But yeah, very interesting album, really incredible album, and the forging and hewing of a really strong camaraderie and kindred relationship that would, be one of a kind, I'm sure, in both Vaughn's life and Ishans' life. And so big up to Ishans, who, you can see playing with Purity Attack Band and many other bands, and always looking forward for more Higher Bound production. Now, the album that we are celebrating the release of this week that you saw at the top of the show, World Tap In, that is Higher Bound Productions and Ishans' latest release of, posthumous release of Akae BEKA, and incredible album. This one right here, incredible, is a wonderful album, and that's the fifth of albums that Ishans has done in collaboration with Vaughn Benjamin since Bless Go Round. So we'll just salute Ishans, and we'll move to the next one. And so Bless Go Round. So Maschana is from 2008. It's the first release of 2008, Roz Element Records. And once again, this is a Roz L production, Natural Vibes collaboration. I believe Roz Ja Red, financed this one and made this one happen and pressed this one. So it says Midnite Natural Vibes collaboration, which is Roz Ja Red. But it is Roz L production. Maschana is Roz L production. Once again, Marcus Wilson, in the art for that, as well as Bless Go Round. That was Marcus Wilson. I mean, Marcus Wilson's crushing it with the art, from the official artist for Vaughn Benjamin's works. And so that's Maschana. That's the 27th album by Vaughn Benjamin. We're getting up there now. Nowhere close. I need to start going faster. 28. We're going to take it to 28, which is a very special one, which is Kaya Magan. Desmond Williams, huge producer, huge engineer, recorder, musician, artist. This album, now I know I said Nemozi and Rasta probably the first Akae BEKA album, but this album is very special because this album was actually recorded in 97 to 98, in between Unpolished and Roz Meg Peace. So, and it wasn't released. It was Desmond Williams who was doing sound at the Rocks, or at the Tacoma station, I believe, in Tacoma Park, was doing shows for Midnite. He was running sound for Midnite and everything. He said, I want to work with you on some productions I have that I'm working on. And so Midnite, along with some of the other musicians, I don't know if Ronnie was involved at all in coming. I know that Tough Lion said that he worked on a few of the tracks guitar parts for a few of the tracks on the album. Joe Strauss worked on the bass for a few of the tracks, but mainly it was just Desmond Williams' solo production. Now, Desmond Williams was pivotal in the rise of Thievery Corporation. That was a sort of club and reggae and dub sort of a unit from DC at the time. And he was brought on board when they developed a fledgling studio that they built at the beginning of their charge. They brought Desmond Williams in to be their engineer and to run the studio and run all that for them. And in the process, them getting put on the map and everything. So Desmond Williams, big up Desmond Williams. But this album was recorded in 97 to 98, and it wasn't released until 2008. So like 10 years later. But when you listen to it, you hear a very young Vaughn Benjamin with a very youthful spirit, with a very creative energy that he was. I think I have to go back on what I said about Namozi and Rasta earlier. This album is like the first Akae BEKA album, because it was the first with the creative freedom for Vaughn to really explore something different other than the Midnite sound in making songs. And this was back then, like with the first this was like one of the first 3 albums worth of music ever recorded by Vaughn. So that's what this album is, Kaya Magan. And it's really good. Scarface and all these really good tunes on there. It's an incredible album. And so that's 2008, but recorded in 1998. That's Desmond Williams. Also big up Preston Powell, Rastafaria Productions to help manufacture and distribute it. Okay, and then now we're at 29. We're at number 29, and this is Infinite Dub. This is dubs and instrumentals of infinite quality from Luster King's production and Vaughn Benjamin's album Infinite Quality. This is the dub album. So they released this one just a year after Digital Ancient. Not sure if Digital Ancient was the engineer name of Moon. I think it was actually Corin's artist name. I could have that wrong. We could be corrected. But yeah, Digital Ancient was the name of the engineer dubwising the whole effects for Luster King production and Infinite Dub. All right, so now we're at 30. We're at number 30, the 30th album for Vaughn to release. And it is a Midnite album, but it is a live Midnite album. Live recorded in California. Was it Moe's Alley? I have it written down. That's a zip code. If you want to look it up, that's 94117 is the zip code of the club that this album was recorded live at. It's a live show. And this was special because it was the first live Midnite album to ever be released, but it was also the first time that the artists that would be the Midnite band at that time and for the rest of the time of the Midnite band would be recorded and released in an album. It's the first time. So after Philip Merchant and Abijah Hicks and Dion were no longer with the band, Ron assumed the role of bass player. They ended up with Christian Sly Molina Corret as the drummer, and Edmund Filatiao, I know I'm butchering it, Fiotiao, and Edwin Kenny Byron as the guitarist, 2 guitarists, and the keyboard player was Lyndon Williams, Rozelle. So that's the lineup on the band for this album, and that's the first time they would be recorded as the Midnite Band and released as this album, which is their first live album. So it's significant in that way. You can even see the sort of the Christ child wielding the hourglass, which time is up from Unpolished, on the cover of that album. So that's the 30th album by Vaughn Benjamin. We're getting there, Baba. And 31. We're at 31 now. And this is in 2008. Once again, 31 is a Lion Tribe Fifth Son collaboration. Joaquin Wilson collaboration with Vaughn with Standing Ground. Big Standing Ground album. This is a great album. This is a pivotal album. Really good. Once again, slow roots, live instrumentation, horns, and flutes and things, and really good, different album, different kind of album. Giving Vaughn time and space to just rest into that cerebral place to channel all the consciousness that was brought forth by the essence and elemental aspects of the sound of the production of this album. I really like the Lion Tribe Fifth Son collaborations with Vaughn Benjamin. I think there's something very special about them. This is Raz Elijah Tafarai's art. This is Raz Elijah Tafarai's art on this album, and it's a beautiful one. You can see like the waterfalls coming down, what appear to be waterfalls coming down. Some animal coming through. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful one. That would be a lovely one to just have on the wall. That would be a nice one to have on the wall. Once again, you can always look up Raz Elijah's art at razelijah.com, www.razelijah.com, to see his art that's for sale and works that he's working on. And I believe access to his blog can be found through www.razelijah.com. So big up to Raz Elijah, big up to Lion Tribe and Fifth Son Joaquin Wilson for Standing Ground. Incredible album. It's out on a double LP too. It's a double LP that you can get on vinyl. I believe it's Akae BEKA. It might stay Midnite still, but I think it was released under Akae BEKA. Okay, so 32. We're at 32, and this is Supplication to Him. This is that Supplication to Him from Raw Star Records, and this is another one. This is another one by Nasiama Uhuru, and great one. A good mix of different kinds of production on there. Once again, I want to say this one has that Lute and Fire track, that first Lute and Fire track with him on it, but I could be wrong. The collaboration of Luton and Vaughn. But this is a great album. This is a wonderful album. It's second from the Raw Star label to collaborate with Vaughn Benjamin. Supplication to Him. All right, we're going to move on to 33, the 33rd album release of Vaughn Benjamin. And this is For All. Now, this is a very interesting album. Youssoufa Sidibe of Senegal collaborating with Vaughn Benjamin in this album called For All, which is an incredible collaboration, and a combination of some more acoustic led songs, some songs that have programmed drums and production that I believe was actually put together by Vaughn himself for Youssoufa Sidibe's Kora-led instrumentals. So basically, Youssoufa Sidibe is a musician, singer, songwriter, Jali, 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 which is the griots of West Africa. In fact, I believe his name, Sidibe, that's an ancient term from where he is for the Jali, which is like a griot, or the one who delivers oral history and historical oral tradition through poems and stories and songs and music from one generation to the younger generation to keep the oral history and tradition alive. And Youssoufa Sidibe is from Senegal, and he's a phenomenal kora player, like the kora harp. And he collaborated on this album with Vaughn and the productions Vaughn had, that he laid like Cora-led instrumentals on it, and then Vaughn sang. And it's an incredible, it's an incredible collaboration, because both of them, if there's one word that could sum up Vaughn in a word, would be Jali, because he is a griot. He is a carrier of the water of history, spoken word and oral history and cultural tradition, and bequeathing it from one generation to the younger generation. I think when we look back at his body of music that he's left us, it's not just us looking back at it, it's going to be young people looking forward with it and looking forward through it and being inspired through it, and basically receiving all of this, the alchemy of all of this knowledge and literature and philosophy and spirituality and metaphysics and scientific understanding and wordsmithing and deeper understanding of etymology and what words actually mean other than how they just sound, and what's the subliminal meaning to language and everything that we're confined to using to illustrate our thoughts. It's Vaughn is, a vanguard of all of these things. And so in that, he's very much an African Jali, or a griot in that way. So this album is great. This album is great, and it's very simple production, other than the Cora. The Cora is incredible, but the production is basically there as a layer for the Cora to stand out. And then the collaboration between Yusufa Sidibe's Cora and Vaughn's spoken word and song is incredible. I was actually lucky enough to see them live. I saw a Midnite show in Willis, Texas, that they performed at after Reggae on the River. They weren't at Reggae on the River, but they played in Northern California at a community center in Willis, in Willits, afterwards. And Yusufa Sidibe was with them, and they performed this long midnight set, and it was incredible. And then at the very end of the show, Yusufa Sidibe came up and did a few songs with just him and Vaughn. He just played the Cora and Vaughn sang, and it was phenomenal. And it was right before this album came out, and I got to see that. So grateful for that experience. It's wonderful. It's incredibly unique. And okay, so we're going to move forward from For All in 2008 to 2009's first release. This is like a doubled up release. These two releases came one after the other. These are two Rastar releases, Rastar collaboration releases, which are lean more heavily on the digital production side. Both of them lean more heavily on the digital production side. I think Nasia Majahuru, Ebna Makonnen was more in the lab working on these, specifically for Vaughn to collaborate with on these, than trying to wrangle a bunch of musicians and all that, because both these albums came out one right after the other in 2009. This is In a Now, which is the first one of 2009, which is his 34th album. Now his 35th album that we're going to go to now, that came right after this one, was Tu Mene. Tu Mene was released in 2009 as well by Rastar. Once again, Rastar. And both of these albums, you can see that both of these albums have the artwork of Marcus Wilson. And see the constellations even mapped out in there and everything. And yeah. So it's unique. And once again, both of those albums are very much sort of the digital program production and more direct collaborative efforts of Nasia Majahuru and Vaughn collaborating on that. And with Vaughn exerting his creative control. Like I think he really enjoyed having a lot more creative control in the projects than at this time. Because as you can see, this whole lineage of years, there hasn't been an African Roots Lab album released in a while, and just constant live performing, and Fifth Son albums, Raw Star albums, I Grade albums. He did the Yusufa Sidibe album and everything. So this is his 35th album, which is Too Mene. And then we're going to go to the 36th album, which is Arca Law. Arca Law in 2010, which is a Higher Bound Productions. Once again, Ishens collaborating with his brethren Lion Eye to collaborate to make this album, which was more of a, once again, digital production type of album that, was a Lion Eye, Higher Bound production, Vaughn Benjamin collaboration, Arca Law, beautiful portrait by Marcus. You see the diver going after the octopus pope. That's interesting. And it's a great album. Once again, more on the experimental side. And a lot of these Higher Bound albums, you can hear the hip hop influence in there, very much paramount in a lot of those, particularly the earlier Higher Bound productions with Vaughn. There's because Vaughn loved him some hip hop, man. He's going to make it conscious. He's a verbalist. He's a lyricist. He's a wordsmith. Of course, he's going to like that, And once again, different from what's being considered the uniformity of the sound that he's being presented with like slow minor key one drop rhythms, which are great. And he's the don of it, but he can do so much more. He can do so much else and so many other things. And this Arca Law is the example of one of those projects. So Arca Law. All right, now we're going to go to the 37th release, which is the first African Roots Lab, Ron Benjamin, Vaughn Benjamin, Midnite collaboration in 10 years. In the last 10 years, it's like, I'm sorry, not the last 5 years. I'm sorry. Correct that. Last 5 years. Really 6 years, because Ancient Maps came out in 2004, and this is in 2010. So it's been 5 to 6 years that there hasn't been an African Roots Lab release. And this is the first one that they've released. And Ron really, he's paramount on this album. He's basically playing everything. And there's a couple other musicians, I think, that, might have added a little bit of this and that. But the drums, it's the first Midnite album. What I noticed about this album is it's the first Midnite album that really leaned into the solid digital drum programming, like just program drums through and through, no real drums, no fills, no crashes, everything on it is digital drums, which I personally wasn't a fan of, but that's just my personal preference. There's a lot of people who love it. I mean, obviously the majority of other collaborators with Vaughn Benjamin preferred that, because most of the Raw Star and a lot of the I Grade and a lot of the Higher Bound stuff was all digital drums, Raz L production, digital drums, so it's like, I just particularly had an affinity for the Midnite drum style and the Midnite drum sound of Dion Bosie Hopkins and everything. So I felt an absence from this album, but that was literally the only absence I felt, because it's an incredible album and it's really cerebral, really dynamic. The bass lines are profound. Everything about the compositions of the songs are profound. It really marks the first Midnite album that Vaughn took a similar approach of, I think, singing out of the inspiration the enigmatic inspiration of the sound freshly, that he was bringing his sort of stream of consciousness to hearing it, putting together the lyrics for it in a similar way. Once he was used to kind of doing that with I Grade and Lion Tribe and Rostar and all the rest, that's where it sounds, it very much sounds like an Akae BEKA sort of Vaughn Benjamin solo album, except for the fact that there's so much of a imprint of Ron Benjamin's musical production in it. So it's interesting, very slow. It's a very slow album. It's a consistently very slow and cerebral album, incredibly good for meditation, incredibly good for putting you in that vibe. I think it's very reminiscent to the track that the live performances took at this point, whereas when Dion and Philip were with them and they were a smaller unit, the songs used to get played a bit faster and they were a bit shorter. And then once they kind of fleshed out the lineup with multiple people, and Ron really took charge as the bass player and kind of conductor of how, you know, micromanaging exactly how he wanted the sound to be depicted, it really slowed the delivery of the songs right down, which is where you hear these slow songs played even slower, even longer, giving Vaughn the empty space to be able to freestyle so much, even within songs that he has lyrics for that are released on albums. So again, sing a verse, sing a chorus, and then go into like a freestyle stream of consciousness through it and do lines of other songs and things you've never heard before and stuff right off the cuff and everything all woven into these songs. And a song might last for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, you know, before he just, you know, and just call it down and then go to a next tune. And there was more of a cerebral delivery of the music at that point. And this, I think, is the first album that really captures that in the studio dynamic of that. So that's what makes a king? Question mark. Good question. That's a very good question. I think we all ought to go listen to that album a few more times to see if we can really hone in what's being prescribed to us as to what makes a king. Okay, so that's 2010, What Makes a King, African Roots Lab. Then we're going to go to Momentum. This is 38. This is Momentum. This is a Fifth Son production. That's Raz Elijah on there with the artistry. And you can see Selassie's face within the roots on the waters. Momentum is the name of the album. And in proper Fifth Son fashion and form, it's live roots, live instrumentation, roots band, you know, horns and things and slow one drop vibes, you know, churning right away for Vaughn to deliver his unique creative imprint on that album. And that is Fifth Son's 2010 release of Momentum, which is Vaughn's 38th album. Now 39, we're going to go to 39, and that's a Rostar album, which is Treasure. And that's from 2011. 2011 is Treasure from Rostar and Vaughn with this album, which I heard from someone very close to the source, and who I do not doubt at all, that he was nominated, actually, because this was, I believe, released through VP Records. This album was released through and distributed through VP Records on the Rostar label and produced through Rostar, but was on the VP Records label and was nominated, or Vaughn was contacted for it to be nominated for a Grammy. And Vaughn didn't even return the request. So from what I heard is this album was supposed to be nominated for a Grammy, but Vaughn didn't even contact them because he wasn't interested in no Grammy. Didn't want to hold no truck with no Grammy. Didn't really care about no Grammy. He's obviously working for, that's who he's working for. It's right there in the cover. He ain't thinking about no trophy. He ain't thinking about no trophy. He ain't thinking about no accolades. He ain't thinking no crowds of people. He's thinking about this right here. Empty room with the Most High conquering a lion alongside his humble lion. That's what he's thinking about. So that's where the treasure lies. It's not in rooms full of gold. It's not silver and gold. It's His Majesty right there. So that's treasure, and it's a great album. Once again, raw star album. So combination of different live band stuff and program stuff, and once again, Nasi Amaj Ahuru and i.e. Ebna McConan with Raw Star Records, producing a great album that was apparently nominated for a Grammy, if Vaughn wanted to be bothered. But he was too busy making this next album, probably. And this next album is Standing Ground. So this is a dub album. This is the Standing Ground dub for Fifth Son and Joaquin Wilson's Fifth Son Lion Tribe album, Standing Ground, but that's the dub album. And I'm including all these dub albums, even though we did the actual vocal album, which is the real album, and the dub albums usually side projects of the engineers. But we're accrediting the musings for these albums being made in the first place to Vaughn Benjamin as well. So Standing Ground dub. That's that one. And then after that, once again, 2011 was The Way, which was another Raw Star release following Treasure. The Way was another Raw Star release. This is very much like In and Now and Too Many, the personal collaborations of Ebna McConan and Vaughn Benjamin in this work. And The Way, okay, so now that's 2011. And once again, Marcus Wilson. Marcus Wilson. And as the artiste making that. And we're going to go to the next one, which is the 42nd release by Vaughn Benjamin, the 42nd album release, which is Anthology, which is the next after What Makes a King, ? Anthology is the 2011 African Roots Lab release. That's very much sort of production-wise, at least, in the same stylings as What Makes a King. It's a Midnite album, proper Midnite album, and with programmed drums. It would kind of surprised me because at this point, Ron is and Vaughn are playing with an incredible, phenomenal band ensemble of live musicians. They got Edwin, they got Kenny, they got Sly on drums, they got Raz L playing keys. Ron's making incredible bass lines. The performances are phenomenal. And then when these albums came out, it was pretty much just like Ron. It was pretty much just Ron doing everything on the productions and Vaughn singing. And it's phenomenal, but it just shows more that, Midnite as an acronym, Midnite as a title, can be attributed to the collaboration of Vaughn and Ron Benjamin as their musical pursuit, because the vast majority of the albums that Ron had anything to do with, he was a pivotal and creative freedom force within those albums in a way that he wasn't with all the other collaborations that Vaughn, under the moniker of Midnite, was collaborating with all these different production teams and engineers. That's mainly why I refer to everything that wasn't African Roots Lab or the first couple of albums as Akae BEKA. Because I think Vaughn's solo works and collaborative works with other creative musicians and engineers and all that is, in my mind and heart, is classified classified as Akae BEKA. And the only stuff I see as Midnite is these albums, like this one right here, What Makes a King, all the way back to Unpolished, that were done in African Roots Lab or with Ronnie at the controls of the musical creative aspect and function of the album's release. So this album's really good. It's really good. It's very similar to What Makes a King, which makes it different from the one that will follow it from African Roots Lab, which we'll get to in a moment. But it's very similar. Like that one and What Makes a King are very similar in their production caliber and sound and formulas, you know, with the programmed drums and Ron basically playing everything and making, I mean, Ron is an incredible musician. Like he has a very creative musical mind, and the soundscapes that he ends up synthesizing out of his mind into these albums are exceptional. Even those two albums, Anthology and What Makes a King, compared to Jubilees and Seek Knowledge Before Vengeance and Ancient Maps and all that. Even though I like those albums more because they give me a nostalgic resonance, I have a nostalgic connection to them. These albums are very creatively unique, and they have the construct, the musical composition in them is very unique. And I've actually been enjoying listening to these albums a lot more recently than I did when they first came out, because, you know, I was hooked on the feeling of the Midnite that I already knew, and we get kind of addicted to our expectations, which is not a good habit. And then when something kind of grinds against those expectations with something uniquely different from what I'm expecting, you or me or any of us can tend to kind of overlook it in the creative aspect of it and say, oh, it doesn't sound like what I thought I was going to get, which it's like, well, that's good. You should know what it's going to be before you get it. So I've been appreciating it more in the years later after it was released than when it first came out. And my biggest grievance, I'm going to be honest, my biggest grievance wasn't live drums. I was like, I know for a fact you have a wicked drummer. I know for a fact, Ronnie, that you play drums, and you played drums on Desiree's last couple albums before these albums. And why don't you have a live drummer on these albums? But hey, I'm not the producer. That wasn't my creative decision. That was just something that was in my heart, longing for more of that. And that perspective and opinion is solely my own. They're phenomenal albums. They're very good. And if you haven't spent time with Anthology, you should check it out. Also, I thought Anthology was kind of a strange name, because Anthology is usually like a best of collection. Like, you know, if you get an anthology of the Four Tops or an anthology of Rick James or anthology of Michael Jackson, it's usually a retrospective collection of like the best of or the high points of their whole musical career is usually the anthology, the elaborate collection of the best ofs. This album is completely original with completely original track lists. And I thought Anthology was a strange name, but that's neither here nor there. That is Anthology from African Roots Lab in 2011. And this next album is King's Bell. King's Bell. And this is, once again, artwork by Marcus Wilson. I believe that last Anthology artwork was by Marcus Wilson too, believe. But this one is certainly Marcus Wilson right here. This is an album produced by Andrew Basie Campbell, phenomenal bass player and musician, and producer out of Jamaica, and worked at, I don't know if he still does, but worked at Tough Gong Studios and works with lots of different Jamaican production teams, and just a phenomenal musician and producer. And this was Vaughn, this was Andrew Basie Campbell bringing Vaughn to Jamaica to record King's Bell with some incredible legendary reggae musicians like Squidly Cole was drumming on some tracks. I believe Leroy Horsemouth Wallace drummed on a couple tracks, and Andrew Basie Campbell played the bass on everything. Like they had, I think Chinna was on some tracks playing guitar. So, you know, they had incredible, legendary, younger and elder reggae musicians from Jamaica recording at Tough Gong. This album had Tippy there dubbing and engineering, mastering things. So it was like a collaboration of phenomenal, brilliant reggae minds working on a sonically uniquely different album for Midnite or for Vaughn Benjamin, because it was a solid roots album. You know, it was a solid roots album, but, you know, just done in a different way. Just done in a different way. I mean, just Jamaican style, you know, Jamaican flavor. No extra browning sauce and allspice in it or something, but it come like it different. It come like it different and unique and creative and an exceptional album. And it is released as King's Bell Akae BEKA on vinyl. I do have a bone to pick about that though, because it came out as a single vinyl, and it's such a long album that they had to cut off like 5 or 6 songs from it. Usually you only got to take off like 2 or 3 songs to make it fit, or you're going to put it on a double LP. This is one of those albums I wish was on a double LP, because it cut too many songs, some really good songs off the album to fit it onto one 45-minute LP. And I really think it was too good an album to dash away that many tunes off of to put on vinyl. That's my only grievance with it. Other than that, it's a phenomenal album. And I hope that maybe the next time they press it, it's as a double LP with all the songs, and maybe a dub or 2 would be great. Big up Andrew Basie Campbell every time. Andrew Basie Records is holding it down, and King's Bell is phenomenal. Okay. It's nice hearing Vaughn play with a bunch of like Jamaican musicians in the mix. Okay. So In Awe, this is 2012, big year, 2012, Fifth Son Records, Joaquin Wilson, Fifth Son Records with In Awe. This is an incredible album. You know, this is another very cerebral, slow, live instrumentation, one drop album, very jazzy. That's what I remember about this album, is it really has like jazz vibes to it, like the horns on it. It really has like jazz vibes in the mix of being like a slow, cerebral roots type of vibe from Fifth Son. It had like a very like laid back jazz energy to it. And it's a great album. And a beautiful, absolutely beautiful cover by Ras Elijah Tafari. I mean, that's an incredible, I've seen that print. I think I even have this print from Ras Elijah Tafari without the words on it, without Midnite In Awe, Fifth Son on it, just as the print. And it is amazing. Like I love that print personally. And so big up Ras Elijah Tafari. Beautiful artwork on this album, In Awe. It will certainly leave you in awe, that's for sure. Okay, we're moving to the 45th album release, which is Children of Jah. Children of Jah, which is a big album, and it's Rostar. And I know a lot of people love this album a lot. So it's definitely worth checking in. He followed it up with a dub version of the album, but Children of Jah is a real good one from Rostar. Rostar really got its stride going and came out with this one. Once again, Marcus Wilson on the artwork. Another incredible depiction by Marcus Wilson with the art. And So that's Children of Jah in 2012 by Raw Star Records. I'm going to move forward to the 46th release, which was the third Higher Bound collaboration, which is Free Indeed. Free Indeed, which was released in 2013 by Higher Bound Productions. Free Indeed, Marcus Wilson and the art for that one as well. And Free Indeed, absolutely incredible album. You know, a little bit more refined, I think, than like Arca Law or even Bless Go Round. You know, really, really kind of just honing in on that sort of Higher Bound Von Benjamin collaboration style, the, you know, hip hop roots sort of hybrid type there, ethereal type of sonic production to it, layering to it. And so, yeah, Free Indeed. Once again, this is released as Akae BEKA on vinyl nowadays. You can find this released. I believe TRS Records is the one who is distributing this album for Higher Bound and Akae BEKA. And so that's Free Indeed. And then 47, we'll go to 47, which is the Children of Jah dubs. That's the Raw Star Children of Jah album, the dub versions of that whole album. And we don't really need to elaborate on that. You know what a dub album is. That's 2013 that came out, which is the year after the album originally came out. All right, so now we're going to move forward to 48, which is Be Strong, which is another incredible one by Fifth Sun Records. I like this one a lot. This is from 2013. Fifth Sun Records, Joaquin Wilson, Von Benjamin collaborating. That's Raz Elijah's artwork with the elephant and the dove and the stairway up to the king. You notice Vaughn isn't, well, we'll go to that in a second. Be Strong, incredible album. If you don't know about this one, it's great. I think sonically, it probably sounds like the cleanest production of the Fifth Sun catalog when it comes to Von Benjamin's. This is a great album right here, especially if you like the slow deep roots. Be Strong. Okay, now big one. We're going to the 49th album released by Von Benjamin, and this is a significant one. Lion Out of Zion. So this is an African Roots Lab album. This is Vaughn and Ron Benjamin collaborating for a proper Midnite album, which will be the final proper Midnite album collaboration between Ron Benjamin and Vaughn Benjamin, you know, as a studio released album. This is the last Midnite album that Vaughn will come out with his brother. And it's a very unique Midnite album because unlike Anthology and What Makes a King, this is the first Midnite album that features the musicians of the Midnite band. You know, the Midnite band that had basically been codified since 2007 through 2014. This album is in 2013, but from 2007 to 2014, the Midnite band that was codified, that you heard playing on the live album 94117 or whatever, that lineup are the musicians that Ronnie used for the first time to record this album. So they actually use, like, Sly is playing drums, Edwin and Kenny are playing guitar, or Edmund and Kenny are playing guitar. Rozelle is playing keys. Ronnie is playing bass. So they're actually using the live Midnite band, the lineup that is Midnite when performing live, as the studio musicians for this African Roots Lab album for the first time ever to do that, and for the last Midnite album that will be released under the moniker Midnite, being the proper collaboration between Ronnie Benjamin and Vaughn Benjamin as Midnite. And so, and it's a great album. It's a tremendous album. It's really good. I was overjoyed to hear real drums. I was overjoyed to hear Sly playing the drums for it because he's such a phenomenal drummer. I was missing out on him on the last two albums and really enjoyed him being there for that. The production quality sounds really good. Ron did a really good job on the production, on the engineering. Great songs, a good combination of pace of the songs. It's not all super cerebral, slow, minor key, one drop songs. It's got some really, really good ones. And I really enjoyed this album. I was really excited when this album came out because I thought this was going to be like one of a number of albums like this with the actual Midnite band playing the Midnite albums in whole and really. So I didn't know it was going to be the last Midnite album, but I'm pleased that we got this one, Lion Out of Zion, Force and Flames, and was it Life of Simplicity? And I mean, it's great tunes. Okay, so that's 2013 African Roots Lab, last collaboration of Ron Benjamin and Bambu. For Ashes, Beauty for Ashes. This is a phenomenal album. I honestly think, I know I said Rule the Time was probably my favorite I-grade album. I don't know, man. There's so many good ones. This one I rank highly. This could possibly be my favorite I-grade Midnite collaboration of all time, because it's just the production. This is like Tippy has risen to the rank, in my opinion, as probably the best reggae production engineer in the world. I think when it comes to releasing reggae music in the world today, I don't care about where you're from. I don't care about where you grew up. I don't care about how long you've been playing music. I don't care about none of that. When I listen to the productions from like this time moving forward to like now, which must have been 2014 till now, I honestly think from this point, I think Tippy's like productions for I-grade records and Zion I Kings, I think are the best reggae production in the world, hands down. I mean, I don't even know. I can't even think of people who come in second. And I listen to a lot of reggae from Jamaica. I listen to a lot of the stuff that comes from Harmony House and Rory Stone Love and VP Records. And I listen to a lot of stuff that comes from Europe and Ineffable Records, Oneness Records from Munich, Germany, House of Rhythm. I listen to a lot of, Joss Solid Rock. All these, I'm naming a lot of producers and production teams from all over the world that are really, really good. Unidad 76 out of Brazil, really, really good production. Voss Records from Trinidad and Tobago. I love Voss Records, working with Marlon Asher and Sizzla Kalonji and ones. Voss Records is on. If you don't know about Voss Records, check out Voss Records. They're all great. Tippy is the best, in my opinion. I think he gets it sounding so good. The bass is so rich. The drums are so crisp. The dub is so good. The ethereal layering he does, the sonic achievement he creates through how refined he has tuned his ear to getting it now, I think is second to none in the world, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. Could be wrong. But I think this album is a perfect example of that. And this album is like 12 years old at this point, you know, but this probably is my favorite Midnite I-grade collaboration album in whole. And once again, at this point, the I-grade collaboration with Midnite is predominantly, if not completely, live instruments, roots, live horns, real drums. I mean, just the best sounding recorded live and studio live instrumentation albums that are being produced. So that's what this album is. Beauty for Ashes. It's phenomenal. And all right, so that's Beauty for Ashes. That's 2014. After 2014, we had Stand the Test, which is the 51st album, the 51 album released by Vaughn Benjamin. And this is Iodine Sounds Collaborations. Now, just taking a moment to salute Iodine, who is Jordan Jones. Jordan Jones, otherwise known as Dutty Hart. His stand-up comedy name is Dutty Hart. He did stand-up comedy as well. Iodine is his artist name, given to him by Vaughn Benjamin. And about a year ago, or last year, Jordan was killed in St. Croix. He is a youth that was very kindred to Vaughn, used to live at Vaughn's property, live at Vaughn's house, live in the studio, used to do a lot of work with him on different productions. They used to do with lots of other artists. And he, you know, was a good friend to Vaughn. He was young. He was like a younger person. And I believe he was about 38 when he passed away last year in a foolish act of violence. It was 12:30 in the afternoon. He was on the boardwalk with a friend, and some 15-year-old kid wanted to steal his chain he had around his neck, some gold chain he had around his neck. So he went to rob him and pull out a gun and shot him, ended up shooting him and his friend, who was trying to, you know, he was like fighting him, trying to get his chain, and then ended up shooting him and killing Jordan. And it was terrible, and it's really unfortunate. And everyone loved Jordan, and he was a good spirit and good soul, and very funny and very creative and musically very astute. And he will be missed. He will be missed, and it's really unfortunate. So all love and peace and condolences going out to the friends and family of Jordan Jones, aka Iodine, aka Dutty Hart. And you know, this was Iodine's first complete release of an album, full-length album with Vaughn, called Stand the Test. You can see Marcus Wilson's art on there. And Stand the Test. And it is very much like production based, like, you know, Jordan programming everything, programming the drums, programming the bass, programming everything. It's a digitally programmed rhythms and everything, and very creative. I mean, very different, very unorthodox, a lot of hip hop influence. I listen to it and I hear early Higher Bound productions is what I hear in it. But all original song, you know, all original productions, all done by Jordan. But in just very kindred sort of stylings of like the amalgam of hip hop and dance hall and reggae, all in a unique melch. So Stand the Test is Iodine Sounds collaborations with Vaughn Benjamin of Midnite, and that came out in 2014. So salute Jordan Jones. We're going to move from 51st to the 52nd. This is Ride True in 2014 by I-Grade Records. This is a good album. This is a really good album. Super rootsy album. Real ethereal. He had, I forget the name of the guitarist he had working with him, but Tippy had us a guitarist working on this album, really laying down these really intriguing guitar lines, weaving it into the soundscape. Ride True is a really good album, and it is the last album that iGrade will produce outright under the name Midnite. It's the last time he will use the Midnite iGrade as the title before the moniker transforms into Akae BEKA. But this is Vaughn's 52nd album, Ride True. And it's a great album. Real good album. And we're going to move to the 53rd album, which is the first album released under the moniker Akae BEKA. If you want to know about that name or what it means, you can go watch the 7.5-hour presentation we did last time, because we're working on not making the 7 hours this time, and we're already at 3, so I need to fly through this. Homage to the Land. This is Joaquin Wilson's Fifth Sun Records' first album under the moniker Akae BEKA in 2015. Homage to the Land. It's interesting. They're doing some different kind of production. It doesn't really sound like a lot of the other Fifth Sun stuff. It's very, I noticed that Vaughn is like, there's like filters on his voice, and it sounds like almost, and not all the songs, but some of the songs sound like there's like a filter on his voice, and it's like they were experimenting with some different things. But anyway, it's a very interesting album, and Homage to the Land. And I believe that's Marcus Wilson there too. Or unless that's Roz Elijah. No, that's Roz Elijah. We get it right. That's Roz Elijah. Yeah, that's Roz Elijah right there. Roz Elijah Tafari's art right there. I can always tell with His Majesty when I see His Majesty, and some of it, when I really get in on, I can totally see it. There it is. So Roz Elijah Tafari, Joaquin Wilson, Fifth Sun Records, Vaughn Benjamin, Akae BEKA's first official album under that moniker, which is his 53rd album. Now we're going to go to his 54th album, which is the first iGrade Records presentation of Akae BEKA and iGrade as Portals. Portals. In 2016 is the Portals album. This is a great album. This is a really good album. And he's really, after the 2014 and 2015 transition into Akae BEKA, there's definitely a heaviness to Vaughn. There's definitely a heaviness that you can feel through his music, and also an urgency at the same time, an urgency to, recall and reclaim vision and reclaim oaths, the oaths of Akae and oaths of BEKA, as an individual tied to these oaths. He's transmitting like the insight through his reconnection to these oaths, through these albums that are to follow the transition. And Portals is a great example of that. Huge iGrade album. I believe he has that same guitarist that was on Ride True on this album. And it's very ethereal, very mystic. So that's Portals, and that is the 54th album. Now the 55th album now ironically, Livicated in 2016 was the first official album release, full-length album release of Vaughn Benjamin on Zion High Productions record label. Now, Zion High Productions is Jah David Goldfine, along with Roz Elliott Lieb. But Jah David Goldfine is the engineer and musician and bass player extraordinaire. He also plays drums and guitars and everything he plays. But he's a phenomenal bass player. But he's also the main bass player for a lot of, at that point, up to that point, a lot of the later iGrade productions as well as some of the Luster King productions, and which is when they were working with Lauren Tippy Alfred of I-Grade Records, David Goldfine of Zion High Productions, and Andrew Moon Bain of Luster King Productions, basically became the Zion I Kings, which was a roots production powerhouse that was, a recording group. There was also affiliates like Andrew Drew Keys Stoch or Strodon, who's the keyboard player. He passed, he transitioned, and he played a lot of keys, piano with them. But basically Moon on guitar, Tippy on keys, and Jadi on bass, creating the vast bulk of rhythms that were being used on I-Grade Records, Luster King Productions, and Zion High Productions, all independently of one another, but utilizing the collaborative production ability to fill out the albums on all these different labels, as well as dropping dub albums and singles and rhythm compilations as Zion I Kings, which is the unified quadrant trifecta of those three record labels, and the creative minds in those three record labels collaborating to do that. But ironically, this is the first, although he had been working with Vaughn and working on a lot of projects through I-Grade and a lot of projects together and rhythms and different things that Vaughn was on and everything. This is the first full-length album that Jadi or David Goldfine would produce with Akae BEKA or Vaughn Benjamin. And that is Livicated. That's 2016. And then we're going to go to the next album, which is the 56th album, which is Ja Say Do. Ja Say Do in 2017, which was released by the Uhuru Boys Productions. I believe that's at least one of Ducky Simpson's sons. One of Ducky Simpson's sons and his production team did the Ja Say Do album, the Uhuru Boys production. Very interesting, very unique, very different. And it was the first production by the Uhuru, first and only actually production by the Uhuru Boys in conjunction with Vaughn Benjamin, Ja Say Do in 2017. So now we're going to go to the next album, which is the 57th album, which is Nurtured Frequency. Nurtured Frequency was released in 2018 from Hayes Street Studios, and that was produced by Andrew Drew Keys Stoch, who's Drew Keys. Played with Common Kings, played with a lot of people, been on a lot of people's albums, worked with the Zion I Kings pretty consistently. He's an incredible musician, played trombone, I believe, as well, and keys, an incredible musician, and ran the Hayes Street Studios, which is where they produced this album with Akae BEKA, and it's an incredible album. Incredible album. It's called Nurtured Frequency. Beautiful artwork on the cover, by the way, is another artist, incredible Rastafari artist named Roz Terms. Roz Terms is, you can go look up his Instagram, Roz Terms 37 on Instagram. He's phenomenal. I mean, he is an incredibly unique, creative artist and has done works for Luster Kings and all over the place. And you might even see his stuff tagged all over the country. I mean, down in Miami, Washington, D.C. I mean, it's all over the place, but he's such a creatively unique and original artist. And that's some of his artwork. And you can go to, you can just type in Roz Terms, Terms, and all sorts of different places where you can purchase his art or see his art or see different projects he's doing will come up, and you can click on that, or you can just go to his Instagram and see what he's doing now, which is Roz Terms 37 at Roz Terms 37, and phenomenal artist. And that album is great. that album is great. It definitely, I'm not going to elaborate on things because we got to get through this stuff, but it's a really good one. And if you haven't listened to that Akae BEKA album, then you're really missing out on one of the finest, and the production quality is really good on there. So that's okay. Yeah. Now we're at 2018. This is Topaz. This is the 58th release by Vaughn Benjamin. This is Topaz, which is Ocean Records, Soundponics Productions, the only collaboration he ever did with them, which is an acoustic album. I mean, it's literally like just an acoustic album with Vaughn singing. And once again, Marcus Wilson on the artwork, beautiful artwork by Marcus Wilson. And yeah, it's just a very, very lovely acoustic album with Vaughn singing. So if you're in that meditative state and you want something to really soothe you down and bring you down to that equilibrium, Topaz is a very unique and creative album for you. But that's once again just acoustic, like literally like acoustic guitar. I think there might be a little piano, but I think it's actually just like acoustic guitar and Vaughn. So it's that's what that is. Topaz. That's 58. Now 59 is the King's Dub. That's the King's Bell Dub, the Andrew Basie Records album with Vaughn. King's Bell Dub mixed by Tippy Alfred. I-Grade Dub, I-Grade Records, Tippy I. He's the one that dubbed this album for Andrew Basie's King's Bell album. It's phenomenal. Okay. All right. Now we're another dub album at the 60th release is Better World Rasta dub. This is the Better World Rasta dub album, the very first Rastar album. This is the dub of that album, and it's great because that was a great album. It had all sorts of wicked live instrumentation tracks and really good stuff, and the dub is phenomenal. And yeah, that's Akae BEKA, Better World Rasta dub. And so that's the 60th album. That's from 2019 from Rastar Records. And then we're going to go to 61st album. And Higher Bound Productions, first release under the moniker Akae BEKA, which is Hail the King. Now, this is a very interesting Higher Bound Productions album because it is solid live band instrumentation. So, and very much in the same way as the new one. The World Tap In new one is live band instrumentation. This was like the first Higher Bound Productions that's like just full live band, live drums, all live, wicked live musicians from all over the place. And, you know, really good live musicians, some that worked with some Kenyatta Aitola that played bass with I-Grade with the Red Eye Band at the very beginning, and Roz L, and, you know, Scotty Linwood Davis drumming, Big Natty, Scotty Linwood Davis drumming, Roz Pulse drumming, really good musicians. Walker Pillow playing guitar, Aishen's playing guitar, really good musicians all around. It's an incredible album, really good Akae BEKA live instrumentation album. I say live instrument, not like it was recorded live, but live like real instruments, you know, not programmed, not synthed out, repurposed synthed out programming or drum programming, like live instrumentation recording. Okay, so that's Hail the King 2019. And then Make a Mention, big Make a Mention album. That's the second Zion High Productions, Jadi producing that Akae BEKA, Zion High Productions. And this is an important album because it's really good. No, it's really good. And it is the last Akae BEKA album that will be released in Vaughn Benjamin's lifetime. It is the last album that will come out while he is still present for the release of this album. And it is in 2000, 19. And it's a really good album. I mean, Jadi's incredible. He's, I mean, right up there. Like all Zion High Productions are phenomenal. I-Grade Records is phenomenal. Zion High Productions, Luster King Production, all phenomenal. And they all work together very intimately in a lot of the creative pursuits. And this album is extraordinary and really good. And this beautiful artwork, by the way, beautiful black and white artwork, except for the earth, is done by an incredible artist. And incredible artist, which his name is Roz Daniel Hartman, otherwise known as Ato Kadane Daniel Roberts, otherwise known as One Art of the Covenant. So if you want to follow him on Instagram, he's done phenomenal artistry. And you can, on Instagram, it's the number 1 Art of the Covenant. So at 1 Art of the Covenant, or you can go to his personal webpage, go to www.oneartofthecovenant.com. And that's Roz Daniel Hartman, and he's phenomenal. I mean, you can just see it's incredible. And so that is Make a Mention by Jadi, David Goldfine. And then this is Protocols, which is the second, it's the first full-length album that will be released after the transition of Vaughn Benjamin to join the Egun. And this was released in 2020 by Iodine Sounds, Jordan Jones, who we just spoke of. And very much in the same production style as that previous Stand the Test album. This was not all of, from what I've heard, but this is all the other works that were in the album he was working on before Vaughn passed. And this is Protocols. And that's Marcus Wilson's artwork that's on that. So big up Iodine. Big up Jordan Jones, big up Vaughn Benjamin, big up all the artists that aren't with us on this realm anymore. And so that was 2020. Now this is the 2020 release of Roz Element, otherwise known as Roz L, Lyndon Williams, Roz Element Records. This is Roz Element's first Akae BEKA album under the new moniker Akae BEKA. And an incredibly good album. It has some of the more experimental stuff that you're kind of used to with Rozelle, but for the most part, it's a way more roots production, sort of, grimy roots, choppy roots production style of more of a roots sounding production compared to what Roz Element's previous stuff with Maschana and Full Cup and Through and True and all those productions were traditionally more of a fire chant, sort of hip hop dance hall type of thing. Whereas this has more like roots style. Still a very unique Roz L sounding production, but more of a roots style, like one droppy style. Akae BEKA album with some other stuff that stands out, you can tell. But the spirit of standing up is Roz Element's works. Always looking forward to more Roz Element. Big up Roz Element each and every time for all the work with the Midnite Band from 2007 to 2014, holding the charge from 2014 to 2019. All of the previous works, all of the works with all the other artists. Unsung hero of the St. Croix reggae music scene. And he's been there standing up with the spirit of standing up and truly standing up for a long time. And I just want to give him his flowers while he's still with us. And so God bless and salutations to Roz Element each and every time. And I've heard of some projects in the works that I'm not going to spoil right here, right now, but let me just say I'm really excited. I'm really excited. And check out Raz Abja's album with Raz Element, Journey. No, not Journey of Gratitude. I'm blanking on the thing, but just look up Raz Abja, Raz Element, and great album. Spirit of Standing Up, great album, same way. Okay, so that's the 64th Vaughn Benjamin album. Now, 65th is Defend Jah. Defend Jah. This is like the posthumous album by Rastar. Rastar Records from 2020. Defend Jah. It's probably probably not all, but some of the unfinished works that he was working on with Vaughn, before the transition, working on finalizing and finishing up and everything. So this is a later period Rastar Productions with Vaughn Benjamin, Akae BEKA, from 2020. So that's Defend Jah. And then we're going to go to the next album, which is the 66th album, Righteous Synergy. And Righteous Synergy is Fifth Sun Records from 2021. Very interesting album. Once again, Fifth Sun, very unique, very interesting. Raz Elijah's artwork right there. Beautiful artwork from Raz Elijah. And incredible album. You can get that one on vinyl. You can get that. That is on vinyl under Akae BEKA, Righteous Synergy. And it's a really good one. Live roots instrumentation, the way Fifth Sun and Joaquin Wilson does. And so that is his posthumous album. 2021 was when this was released. And then Polarities is 67. Polarities is I-Grade Records posthumous release from 2021. Beautiful album. It's really good, really heartfelt. Vaughn really in it, giving you the polarities to consider, the polarities to look at, achieving balance, retrieving balance, finding a way to get the heart lighter than the feather, and, all the ways in which the trials, up and downs in which we must endure in order to do that. It's a beautiful album. Big up Tippy for this album, and Vaughn indeed. Polarities, finding balance, So that's 2021, and that is the 67th album. And then now the 68th album, I'm going to call this an album, even though it's an EP, and it's a unique EP. It's from Zion High, Zion High Productions, Zion High Kings Productions. So Jadi produced it and released it, but it's recorded Zion High Kings production from 2023, and it's Vaughn Benjamin collaborations with other artists. So there's like every track, I think there's 5 or 6 songs on it. I believe there's that many, but every track is him with another artist. So there's like a Vaughn Benjamin with Micah Shemaiah, Vaughn Benjamin with Rima, a Vaughn Benjamin with Michael Rose, a Vaughn Benjamin with Kabaka Pyramid, and there's 1 or 2 more. And really good production, really good songs, really good to hear, the artists in collaboration, particularly Jamaican artists in collaboration with Vaughn Benjamin, making something real special. And yeah, it's a beautiful album. It's an EP. It's not like a full-length album, and it's collaborations. So I kind of was deciding whether I wanted to include that in the album lineup or not, but I threw it in there at 68, because also that's where it is in the chronological timeline at 2023. And then we're going to go to 69, which is the next, which is Living Testament, which is the album produced by Raz Biblical and Trinity Farm Music. Raz Biblical, Brethren of Ishans, down there in Northern California, Grass Valley, Trinity area. Trinity, Northern California, Roz Biblical throwing down with his Trinity Farm production. He's actually been doing a lot of work with that recently, a lot of good work, a lot of Virgin Island reggae artists, and this album, as well as his own productions and other artists down there, Currency King and Bobo David, and, you know, incredible artists. Produced an album with Ja Rubal, key brethren of Vaughn's, did an album with Ja Rubal, a bunch of compilations with people. So that's great. And this album is on the Trinity Farm Music record label with some tremendous musicians, live instrumentation, all roots. Like, that's what he deal with. It's all roots, live instruments, real drums. Big up Big Natty, Scott Linwood, big up Roz Pulse, big up Walker Pillow playing guitars, big up all the incredible artists laying down actual music for those productions. And that's Living Testament. And that's a very good, you know, posthumous Akae BEKA album, and works that Biblical was working with Vaughn for quite a while to do that. It's a Trinity Farm Music plus Goa Chant Productions. Goa Chant Productions is Manuel Guerra. Manuel Guerra, Goa Chant from Spain, I believe. Spain, originally living in Shashamane in Ethiopia. I don't know if he's still there. I think he's back and forth between. But Goa Chant, incredible production, deep roots production. So Manuel Guerra with Goa Chant Productions in collaboration with Trinity Farm Music to make the Living Testament and release in 2024. So we're going to go to the next album, which is the 70th full-length album, which is World Tap In, which brings us up to today, which was just released on the 5th, just a few days ago, and May 5th. And this is the 5th release. I don't know if it was meant on like that on purpose, but this is the 5th release, full-length album release by Ryan Ishence Willard for Akae BEKA, Vaughn Benjamin, live instrumentation, and phenomenal live instrumentation at that, which is just the music credits are engineered, mixed by Ryan Ishence Willard, bass played by Roz L, which is the bass player of Akae BEKA, and Kenyatta Itola, which was the bass player of all those early I-Grade record collaborations with them in I-Grade Records. Also had guitars by Edmund from the Midnite and Akae BEKA band, as well as Tough Lion from I-Grade Records and early Midnite, Rosmek Peace era, Midnite, DC era stuff. Ishence as well playing guitars in there. Keys played by Surin from the Akae BEKA band, as well as Roz L from his time at the Midnite band, as well as Vaughn Benjamin adding to keys. Jordan Iadon Jones as well on keys on this album. Drums played by Christian Sly Molina Corette, which is the drummer from Midnite from 2007 to 2014, and then for the first number of years with the Akae BEKA band. Big up Christian Sly Molina on drums. Also had extra percussion done by Scotty Linwood Davis, Big Natty, as well as Roz Pulse. And then Vaughn Benjamin adding to percussion, as well as Ishence, and horns by Jamal Tarkington and Rodney Teague. It's a great album, full-on live band album. I love the live band albums with Vaughn. I love the live instrumentation. I love to see a lineup like that. It's almost like a best of musicians from the I-Grade days, from the early Midnite days, from the later Midnite and Akae BEKA band days, from the Higher Bound production days. I mean, it's like a bunch of incredible artists, and you know, it's a beautiful album. I've only been able to listen to it a few times thus far, but I'm going to keep on listening to it. And you can get it on any streaming service or any place to buy digital downloads, as well as TRS Records is about to release a vinyl copy for sale and distribution from TRS Records. You can go to TRS Records on Instagram or trsrecords.com and pre-order the vinyl copy now if you want to. But this is the most recent album that is out for Vaughn Benjamin, and that was in at number 70. And I did want to, now I have a few others, so don't get too excited. I have a few others. We have at 71, I have the Akae BEKA Scrolls, which was a instrumentational musical project put together by Trinity Farm Music and Roz Biblical's production, along with Goa Chant Records, along with Vaughn Benjamin. And basically, Vaughn Benjamin wanted to curate, was recorded at Trinity Farm Music and mixed by Goa Chant, but like wanted to curate with musicians that he picked out, rhythms that he basically instructed every aspect of the rhythm. He basically curated the rhythms and said, I want the bass to be like this, and then get Kenyatta Itola to play it for my guy. I want the guitar to be like this and get Walker Pillow to play it. I want the keys to go like this and get them to play it, so it's like, this is, I believe Scotty Linwood Davis and Roz Pulse were the drummers on these rhythms, but they're all curated and arranged. The arrangements are done by Vaughn Benjamin himself. And I know iShens was a part of it too, and Biblical and everyone. So like this was a very special musical project that was put together. Now you can get the instrumentals of these rhythms. It's called the Akae BEKA Scrolls, and they're all listed as different psalms, different number psalms, but you can get the instrumentals to hear just the instrumental projects. And as of this point, he wanted them to be utilized by his brethren to make albums too. So up to this point, the two albums that have been made are Journey of Gratitude by Raz Abja, utilizing these rhythms. Journey of Gratitude by phenomenal artist Raz Abja out of St. Croix, and then another incredible artist out of St. Croix, Fire Chant artist and key brethren of Vaughn Benjamin, Ancient King. Ancient King made an album, The Oath of Akae. The Oath of Akae by Ancient King and Journey of Gratitude by Raz Abja, both released by Trinity Farm Music and Goa Chant production collaboration, utilizing the Akae BEKA Scrolls. And hopefully more to come, hopefully much more to come. And, but those albums are really good and in tribute and homage to Vaughn Benjamin. And I included that album because he arranged, and even though he didn't sing on any of those rhythms, he kind of arranged and micromanaged the creative direction of all of those rhythms. So that goes to him. And so that would be the 71. And now I got a few that we're going to go through real quick, because these are just the ones that were compilations that Vaughn was on, compilations that Vaughn was involved with. And the only compilations I included were compilations where he had 3 or more tracks. If he had like three or more tracks, I included them. If it was only one song on a rhythm, I didn't include it. If it was a single released, I didn't include it, because then we'd definitely be here for another 7 hours. We're not doing that. So, but he was integral in the whole process of being part of the compilation. And so the first one is Aya Eit's production out of St. Croix, Eastbound, Volume 1. He's on there. That's where his Roll Call was recorded. Roll Call song was recorded. Grapes of Wrath was recorded. There was another track recorded. and it was on the Eastbound production by Aya Eitz production. I believe Ron even played keys on some of the rhythms on this compilation. And so that's 1999. That's from 1999. All right. That was 72. We're going to go to 73. Weep Not. This is the first compilation by iGrade Records in 2002. It's the Weep Not compilation, and it's got a few from Vaughn in there, marked Midnite, and it's got Ancient King under the name Willow, and all sorts of artists from St. Croix, St. Thomas in the mix, and it's an iGrade compilation. It's really good. Weep Not. And then we're going to go to 74, which is a compilation by Higher Bound Productions. Higher Bound Productions in 2009 with New Name. And I believe Ancient King is on there. Excalibur is on there. Vaughn's on there. There's some others I forget at the moment. But that's iShense's Higher Bound production compilation that Vaughn was included on. And Keon, New Name. Once again, Marcus Wilson art. Beautiful Marcus Wilson art in that. Okay. The next one. So that's a Rostar compilation with Vaughn Benjamin, as well as Norris Man, as well as John Mason, as well as Luton Fire, all on different rhythms put together by Rostar, King of Kings. That was a compilation from 2009. Okay, we're going to go to the next one, which is a Rostar as well, which is Frontline Soldier. Frontline Soldier, which once again, Midnite, Turbulence, John Mason, Norris Man, all compiled on different rhythms put together by Rostar. And I forget, one of those includes the Rostar rhythm, which was almost like a refix of Welcome to Jamrock style rhythm that came out at the time called the Rostar rhythm. And it's on one of those. And there was a whole rhythm album that came out called the Rostar rhythm that Vaughn was on too. So that is Frontline. And then there's one more that I didn't send you an image for that I'm going to include because I realized it at the very end. And it's from 2019. So it actually was released a few weeks after Vaughn passed. And at the beginning of November, Vaughn passed. And this was released on the 20th of November. So just like a few weeks after Vaughn passed, it was released. And it's by the Green Lion Crew production, which is an American production team out of York, Maine, by Zeke Stern and Dana Knowles runs the Green Lion Crew. And the compilation album is called Be Still. Be Still. And Be Still is the name of the compilation with Danny I, Pressure Bus Pipe, Vaughn Benjamin. It's got some real good stuff. Big production. And I'm so close to being done, Baba. We're almost there. We're almost done. We're almost at the home stretch. We're about to wrap this up. And so that's all of the albums, which means that's 74 full-length albums plus one EP collaboration, 5 dub albums, 6 compilations, 6 compilation albums, and 1 instrumental album arranged by Akae BEKA, arranged by Vaughn Benjamin, which totals 77 albums. 77. And just to put a pin on it, just to put a pin into exactly how many albums he did for whoever, we put Ronnie at the top of the list because he has in order. I mean, this isn't actually even in order. This is close to order, but we're putting Ronnie at the top of the list because he's Vaughn's brother, Ronnie Benjamin, and at the outstart of the whole Midnite experience. African Roots Lab, Ron Benjamin Jr. was involved in producing 9 full-length albums, including 1 dub album, one live album. So that's 11 all up. And 2 of those albums that I included with the full-length album were Unpolished and Roz Makepeace, that he didn't actually engineer, but was integral in producing and making and creating, because it's songs that him and Vaughn wrote. Unpolished and Roz Makepeace. But that's 9 full-length albums, 1 dub album and 1 live album that Ron was involved with, and creatively to that level. Now, I-Grade Records, Lauren Tippy Alfred, 10 full-length albums, 1 dub album, 1 compilation. And then Rostar Records, or Nasiamaj Uhuru, 7 full-length albums, 2 dub albums, 2 compilation albums. Fifth Sun Records, including the Lion Tribe stuff by Joaquin Wilson from Fifth Sun Records, 7 full-length albums, 1 dub album. Roz L, or Roz Element Productions, Lyndon Roz L. Williams, with 4 full-length albums. And Vaughn was also included on 1 compilation album. I believe it's called Itinual Ja. And then Higher Bound Productions, 5 full-length albums and 1 compilation album, that being New Name that we just spoke about. Branch I collaborations of Vaughn, Philip Merchant Jr., Dion Hopkins came to a total of 4 full-length albums. Zion High Productions with David Jadi Goldfine with 2 full-length albums and 1 compilation album. Also a bunch of other rhythms and a bunch of other singles, and Zion I King stuff. Mystic Vision, being Drazy Melody, and saluting of Joseph General along with Drazy Melody for the Mystic Vision collaboration. 2 full-length albums, Current and New 1000. Had Iodine Sounds, or Jordan Jones, producing 2 full-length albums, Withstand the Test and Protocols. Luster King Productions, Andrew Moonbane and Corin Haskell, with 1 full-length album and 1 dub, but he's involved. Moon is involved in all the Zion I King stuff and a lot of the other I-Grade productions and Zion High productions as well. So that's Luster Kings with 1 full-length album, 1 dub album. Then Andrew Basie Campbell, or Andrew Basie Records, with 1 full-length album and 1 dub album, dubbed by Tippy. And then Hayes Street Studios, involved in just 1 full-length album. That's Andrew Drew Keys Stotch with the Nurtured Frequency album. Trinity Farm Music, Roz Biblical's Trinity Farm Music, with 1 full-length album, 1 dub album, in assistance with the 1 rhythm album, the Akae BEKA Scrolls, arranged by Vaughn Benjamin, recorded at Trinity Farm Music. Groundbreaking Records, Donnie Dread from St. Croix, Donnie Dread with the Groundbreaking Records, 1 full-length album with Anid. Sacred Sounds, Yusufa Sidibe, along with Vaughn Benjamin, producing the For All album, collaboration album. And that, my friend, is all the Akae BEKA and Midnite albums in chronological order to clarify who was involved, when they came out, what order they were in, and all the people that deserve their flowers for all the creative work that they aided and abetted the Honorable Vaughn Andre Benjamin, Akae BEKA, with creating and gifting to us. Or as he would say, the Most High created that. Jah Rastafari created that. Xavier created that. He was just the messenger. He was just the conduit. He was just the antenna. He was just that which was the conduit to pass the frequency through right on to us. Where, until things truly change, as long as we get the vinyl or the hard copy, or hope that there's no E-bomb that goes off and wipes the cloud clean, we'll have all this music to study for ages on by, and the people that come up under us can study it, and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren can learn more from Vaughn Benjamin that we were ever able to learn in our time. And I'm so glad that we didn't include all of that on the tail end of that 7.5-hour presentation, because there's no way I'd still be alive. But I want to thank you so much, Baba, for holding space and making place and time for us to be able to do it, because it was something that I obviously really felt compelled to share, to provide the accuracy and relevance in, because, and the thing that inspired all of this in the first place was I heard so much misstatements about Midnite did this, Midnite did that, and I would seek out research, and all of these albums would be attributed to Vaughn and Ron's collaboration called Midnite, and not really tipping the hat to all the other people involved in Vaughn Benjamin's solo collaborative efforts apart from the Midnite Band, which I love the Midnite Band. My favorite Vaughn Benjamin music is the Midnite Band. But for the sake of clarity and accuracy, I felt compelled to beef up the historical record and feed the AI all this information as data to mine to get it right. That being said, I want to thank you so very much, Baba, and Baba TV Universe family and friends, for allowing us to just do it again. And hopefully again and again and again, as long as there's breath in this body and light in this world, you know, we're desperately going to be seeking to share that light in all the places of darkness that seem to be closing in. So I want to thank you so much, Baba, and I really appreciate you, and all my love to you and the Baba TV family, and Baba TV Every Time Fire, where it's every time fire, and we burning out hypocrite and liar. And anyone carrying that bag of wire, well, you can go run and tell it from the mountain now, because it's all out. It's all out. So big up yourself, Bob. Enough love and respect.
Yo, this is Mr. AT, otherwise known as Amlak Tafari, or you could say the international reggae ambassador. A-Lars, baby.
All right, it's Irene D from Steel Pulse.
You better know.
Oh,
you are tuning into Baba TV.
That's right. Every time fire, every time, you know.
Street consciousness, Rastafari vibes.
That's right.
Whole heap of interviews, whole heap of things to learn from.
Archives.
Right, yes, sir.
All right,
Baba
check it
TV.
out.
You don't know. Yeah?
You don't see
it.
Right. Big up.
Greetings all massive. This is Glenn Washington. I want you to check out Baba TV Every Time Fire. Pure niceness every time. Keep the dial locked to the station. I hit a rule the nation. Baba TV Every Time Fire.
Lightning, earthquake and thunder. I won't say Baba TV Every Time Fire.
This is Rashilo representing for Baba TV Every Time a Fire. All Emmanuel I King Selassie I Jah Rastafari to the world. Man as my brother Selassie I live in.
Jake from Soja. Big up Baba. Keep it strong, keep it locked. Peace.
Yeah, man, Mr. Most definitely Jerry represent for Baba Every Time Fire. Mr. Yo, Baba TV, keep it locked. Boom.
Yo, Wagwan world. This is Jordan Blackamore right here coming at you. And it's all about Baba TV Every Time Fire. Big up my brethren, Baba salute. Log on and check the fire every time.
Boom. I do this not for fame, so that girls can scream my name. I do this for you. Yes, Baba TV, we do this for you. Every Time Fire show, keep the fire blazing. Baba, big up yourself. Divinity, Messenger Singer, the first. Baba TV, I'll point us,
Baba T, Every Time Fire, respect.
Bless love, this is Kabaka Pyramid, representing for Baba TV Every Time Fire. You know, says more fire, more upliftment, more consciousness. Kabaka Pyramid, see? Blessed love.
The one and name Baba TV. Them say that them bodies are the Bada TV. Tell them this are the Dada and the Mother TV. Alright then, and a boss and a Braga TV. Alright, tell them say you're Baba TV. You're the king of fight, they're not keeping it locked. You don't know Baba TV can't quote. Good over evil, life over death, money over war. Righteousness is all the nation. Sin is a reproach to anyone or any people. Baba TV, that we are praying. More fire.